be pushing their way northwards, affecting northern England and also into Scotland. Some of these are going to be quite heavy at times, giving hail and thunder. Elsewhere, turning drier, some low cloud across western parts, clearest in the east, but temperatures still ranging around 10 or 11 degrees. So it is going to be a mild start as we start Monday, but a bit of an east-west split in the weather. Once that low cloud generally clears across much of England and Wales, it will turn drier and brighter. Showers coming into Scotland, but further west we have an area of low pressure bringing outbreaks of rain across Northern Ireland, western parts of England and also into South Wales too. So it is going to be feeling cooler for all, highs of up to maybe 20 or 22 degrees. As we go through Tuesday, that rain shifts its focus further towards the north and east with showers following, and then that really sets the scene for the outlook as well. So longer spells of rain on Tuesday, Wednesday and Thursday, sunny spells, scattered showers, not as warm but still highs of 20 or 21 degrees.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Don't miss your chance to win our biggest cash prize so far. A totally terrific £20,000 in tax-free cash to make your summer spectacular. You could use that cash to splash out on a holiday, make the garden glam, buy a new car, or just save it for a rainy day. Whatever you'd spend £20,000 on, make sure you don't miss the chance to make it yours. For another chance to win £20,000 in tax-free cash, text PRIZE to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB05 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 31st of May. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News,
Britain's news channel.
We're GB News, and we come from a proud tradition of British journalism.
That's why I'm so excited to be here. It's something so new.
The first news channel to be launched in Britain in over 30 years.
Launched to represent the views of the British people.
To go where other broadcasters refuse to go.
How did you find out about the story in the first place?
Launched with one aim.
To be the fearless champion of Britain.
It's an absolutely fantastic atmosphere here.
This is GB News.
The People's Channel.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threats on.
Our job is to do what's in the best interest of our country.
You made my argument for me. My guest and I tackle the issues that really matter, with a sharp take on every story.
I'm hearing it up and down the country.
That was a beginning, not an end.
Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello, good afternoon and welcome. It's just coming up to 3 o'clock. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. And for the next 3 hours, me and my panel will be taking on some of the big topics hitting the headlines right now. This show is all about opinion. It's mine, it's theirs, and of course it's yours. We'll be debating, discussing, and at times we will disagree, but no one will be cancelled. So joining me in the next hour, broadcaster and journalist Danny Kelly, And also broadcaster and author Christine Hamilton. In a few moments, we'll be going head-to-head in a clash of minds in the clash with Lord Daniel Moylan and Conservative member of the House of Lords, and Norman Baker, former Liberal Democrat minister, will be going head-to-head in the clash. Then, are Labour spying on you? As Labour have been dubbed the government in waiting whilst finally outlining their policy plans, the Welsh Labour government are using satellites to spy on homeowners with big gardens. The Telegraph reported a bid to raise council tax. My outside guest, a mystery. Well, the daughter of the famous husband and wife team, Jerry and Sylvia Anderson, the creators of the cult television series Thunderbirds, Stingray, Fireball, XL5, Joe 90, Captain Scarlet and Space 1999. I used to love that. And then clickbait today. What's happening here? Before we get started, let's get your latest news headlines.
Nana, thank you and good afternoon. The top stories from the GB newsroom. Claims a British-Israeli hostage has died in Gaza are being urgently investigated by the Foreign Office. Hamas says Nadav Popplewell, who was kidnapped during the October attack in Israel, was injured during an airstrike a month ago. Undated footage of the 51-year-old with a black eye was also released. The government says it's seeking more information after the terrorist group made the claim in a video. Deputy Foreign Secretary Andrew Mitchell is condemning the actions of Hamas.
My heart goes out to the family at this extraordinary time with the barbarism of these appalling terrorists who have treated the family in such a cynical, cruel and heartless way. And we must wait for further information to become available. But what an appalling, dreadful experience for this poor family to have to suffer at the hands of this absolutely dreadful terrorist organisation.
Tory defector Natalie Elphicke denies she lobbied the Justice Secretary over her then-husband's sex offences trial. Sir Robert Buckland claims the MP, who crossed the floor to Labour, requested the case be moved to a lower-profile court. Speaking to the Sunday Times, he says she was told the request was completely inappropriate. Her spokesperson refuted the accusation, describing it as nonsense in the Mail on Sunday. Ms Elphicke ended the marriage when her husband was convicted of sexually assaulting 2 women and jailed for 2 years. At least 7 people have been killed and 17 injured, including 2 children, after an apartment block collapsed in Russia. State media says fragments of a Ukrainian missile, which were downed by Russia's air defence system, landed on the building in the city of Belgorod. Rescue efforts were hampered when the roof also collapsed, with rubble covering emergency crews. They've now resumed their work in a bid to find more survivors. A third man has been arrested on suspicion of murder following a house fire in Wolverhampton. Emergency services were called to a property in the Dunstall Hill area at 2 a.m. yesterday, where 2 women, both in their 20s, were pronounced dead at the scene. 4 people were also injured. Police have been granted extra time to question 2 men who were arrested yesterday. Aged 19 and 22, it's believed they were known to the women. In other news, applications have opened for funded childcare, an expansion on the government's current offer for working families. Parents of children who are older than 9 months from September are now eligible for support. Parents of 2-year-olds have been able to access 15 hours of funded childcare since last month. The full rollout will see support increase to 30 hours a week by September next year. Labour has rejected a report claiming its fair pay agreements in social care could cost taxpayers £4.2 billion a year. The party says it wants to empower adult social care professionals and the trade unions that represent them so they can negotiate better deals. The Policy Exchange think tank says the total cost of the proposed wage rise in 2023 to 2024 would have been at least £9.9 billion per year. Labour says the claims are based on fiction and do not reflect party policy. Weather warnings for thunderstorms are in place across the country, with Britain's warm spell ending this afternoon. Temperatures are still expected to reach around 27 degrees in central parts of the country before the wet weather rolls in. The Met Office has issued new alerts for rain in southwest England. Heavy downpours are also expected to hit eastern areas of Northern Ireland, with a warning in place until 6 o'clock on Tuesday morning. And 2 skydivers have become the first to navigate their way through Tower Bridge wearing wingsuits. The pair from Austria jumped from a helicopter and flew across the River Thames, reaching a top speed of 152 miles per hour before successfully winging their way between the bridge towers. The stunt followed extensive training in Oxfordshire, which involved the use of cranes to simulate the structure.
Feeling good. I'm feeling really good. It was quite intense, I would say, but yeah, we were well prepared. And
For the latest stories, sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts. Now back to Nana.
Thank you, Tatiana. Wow, I'd love to do that. Or maybe one of my rivals chucked them in one of those things. Wow, that looked impressive. Well, welcome on board. This is GB News. I'm Nana Akua. It's just coming up to 7 minutes after 3 o'clock. Before we get stuck into our debates over the next hour, let me introduce you to my clashers. Joining me today is Lord Daniel Moylan, Conservative member of the House of Lords, also Norman Baker, former Liberal Democrat minister, who will be going head-to-head in the clash. Right, let's see what's coming up as the Labour government finally outlined their future policies. They appear to be leaving a bitter taste with many voters, as the Welsh Labour government is using satellites to spy on homeowners with big gardens as it seeks to overhaul council tax. And on Friday, Sir Keir Starmer announced his plans, if elected to government. He would see counter-terror powers to smash people smuggling gangs, as well as scrapping Rwanda. New Labour MP Natalie Elphicke has been accused of lobbying ministers in attempts to interfere in her former husband's sexual assault case. Will Sir Keir Starmer regret opening a can of worms? And then civil service diversity jobs will be banned in a new crackdown on Whitehall woke in a radical overhaul aimed at ending backdoor politicisation of the civil service. But should the government be focusing more on important matters, or is this an important matter? After all, wasting money, government money, our money, is serious stuff. And according to The Times, Prince Harry, the Duke of Sussex, did not see Charles during a trip to London this week, but apparently there are different versions of who asked or did not ask to see who. As ever, get in touch in the usual way. gbnews.com/your say, or tweet me at GBNews. But first, is this really a government in waiting? Yesterday, Lord Kinnock, remember him? He's the one in 1983 when he fell into the sea on a beach. He was trying to impress the press. It backfired magnificently. And then in 1992, he led his party to defeat in an election which was seen as a guaranteed win for his party. But yesterday, even he pointed out that people are simply not in love with Sir Keir Starmer's party, and that it was more of a sick of the Tories vibe. The public want change. And as the Labour Party policies unfold, they appear to be leaving a bitter taste with many voters. Keir's unpopular plan on education is starting to unravel. The proposed 20% VAT, which will be added to independent schools' fees, should they get into power as predicted, they will. It has already seen 2.7% fewer admissions to these schools, with that number set to increase. And already strapped parents are scared that they won't be able to afford them, choosing not to enrol, further burdening the state sector. A rumoured 40,000 children are expected to end up back in the state education system, and lots of those independent schools may well be forced to close. A law of diminishing returns, it seems. His proposal to tackle the small boats under terror laws, many say, are a repackaged version of what already exists.
Britain can do better. Labour will do better. We will end this farce. We will restore serious government to our borders, tackle this problem at source, and replace the Rwanda policy permanently. Today we launch our plan to do that. A new approach to small boat crossings that will secure Britain's borders, prevent the exploitation by tackling it upstream, and smash the criminal smuggling gangs. And as the first step in this plan, a new manifesto commitment. We will set up a new command with new powers, new resources, and a new way of doing things. Border Security Command.
Border Security Command. Sounds great, doesn't it? Sounds like a bit of marketing, to be honest. And scrapping the only thing that appears to be having any impact, Rwanda, madness. And to top it off, we discover that plans to increase trade union rights with new fair play agreements championed by Angela Rayner, whose tax affairs around her old house have all gone quiet, would cost an average household an extra further £225 in council tax. And as for using satellites to spy on people with big gardens to rewrite the property bans, which is currently happening in Wales, Keir Starmer called this the blueprint of what a Labour government can do. God help us. I don't know about you, but if you think tax is high now, I can't see them going down anytime soon under those plans. But what do you think? gbnews.com/your say. Welcome again to my head-to-headers, Lord Daniel Moylan, Conservative member of the House of Lords, and also Norman Baker, former Liberal Democrat minister. I'm going to start with you, Daniel. Plans to... Well, where do you want to start with this? There's a lot to unravel. Your choice.
Well, you've got a couple of questions there, haven't you? The first, when you say, are they a government in waiting? First question is, do I think they're going to win the general election? I think the chances are, obviously, that they are going to win the general election. The second question is, are they behaving like a government in waiting? Are they showing themselves fit to be a government? I think we're a long way from seeing Labour Party in that position. First of all, they've revealed very, very few policies. So we actually really don't know what Labour in power would do. Now, presumably at some point they will tell us, I suppose. They'll tell us some of the things they're going to do, but they haven't told us yet, so it's hard to make a judgment. But when you do see what they have said and what they are going to do, it's all very worrying, because it does seem to be determined as much by buying off little bits of his party. You know, I'll buy off the left with this and I'll buy off the right with that, rather than any coherent plan or vision. That's one of the things about Keir Starmer. He's never had a vision. He's never really been a politician. He's never had a vision for where he wants to take the country. If you want to tell me what his vision is, I'd be happy to be told. But I've no real idea where he wants to take the country. We've got the VAT on school fees, private school fees, which is purely vindictive and done to please a certain section of the left of his party. The Rwanda thing, I just don't believe. If Rwanda is having an effect in deterring people from coming here, and that's not just measured by the number of people who are actually being flown to Rwanda, if it's having an effect in deterring people who are coming here or encouraging them to go to other EU countries and away from Great Britain, then I don't think he will scrap it. I think he will find excuses not to do so, because people will find it astonishing that he is scrapping something that works. As for having a new border command, that's a great idea. In fact, the Conservatives have done it already.
Exactly.
And it exists. But he could bolster it up and give it a new name and maybe a bit more money. But the essential thing about disrupting the criminal gangs is that most of them are operating outside the UK.
Yeah.
So unless these guys can do Mission Impossible style raids into the dens, into the basements, into the hidey holes, where these criminal travel agents are operating, that's essentially what they are. They're running a business.
Well, it's an industry, isn't it?
Unless they can do that, I don't see that they'll be able to do very much more than the government's already achieving on that front.
Norman Baker.
Well, where do you want to start?
Exactly.
But essentially, I'm going to agree actually with Daniel on one point, which is that we're not quite clear what the Labour Party will do if they get into power. And at the moment, they're operating what's called a main vase policy, where they're holding this main vase terribly carefully and walking across a polished floor, desperate not to drop it, and revealing nothing very much of what they want to do, because they don't want to lose any votes. And that may be a sensible political strategy, but it's not a very honest one in terms of telling people what they want to do. So we do need some more clarity, and we want some proper debate, I think, between the three parties, the Lib Dems as well, as to what will happen after the next election, because it may well be that there'll be a Labour government, there may be a hung parliament. Here's where I agree with Rishi Sunak, that there's a possibility responsibility behind Parliament looking at the local election results, because the local election is determined that people are following an ABC strategy, anyone but Conservatives, and voting for whoever can beat the Tories in their particular part of the world. That's what the local elections showed. So we do need to know what's going to happen. We don't want a big surprise, Agatha Christie style, on the day after the election as to what's going to be the policy of the government of the day. So, but in terms of some of the issues which have been raised, I don't think the Rwanda policy is working. We've had one person go so far who went voluntarily with a nice £3,000 cheque and guaranteed accommodation when he gets there. But the border control command arrangement that the Labour Party is putting forward is in fact the same as a Tory one repackaged. There's no different about that at all. The best thing the government at the moment has done about this situation has been to reach a deal with Albania on a bilateral arrangement, which has actually cut the numbers from Albania quite significantly. And more of those sorts of arrangements, I think, and more engagement with the European Union is probably the way forward. But it isn't going to be very easy, and it won't solve the problem overnight, if at all. So, you know, that's the issue with that. Now, in terms of the Natalie Elphicke thing, which we want to talk about, perhaps. Look, I mean, this is a grubby political story of big time, isn't it? First of all, she's not a Labour Party she's not signed to the Labour Party philosophically. She's a right-wing Conservative. So why is she joining the Labour Party? It can only be to get back at Rishi Sunak on a personal basis. There can't be any other reason for doing so. Why has Keir Starmer adopted her in the teeth of opposition from his own party? Because he wants to get one over the Tories. Why are we now finding out about this allegation about her lobbying the Justice Secretary now and not 3 or 4 months ago? Because it's very convenient to do so.
We'll do more on Natalie Elphicke later on in the show. I'm glad you're prepped on that, because honestly, there's more and more coming out about her every second. But as we said, we were talking about Rwanda, and on Friday, Sir Keir Starmer announced his plans, if he was elected to government, to use counter-terror powers to smash people smuggling gangs. And as Norman pointed out, we already have something pretty similar to this sort of thing, and it's pretty disingenuous, in my view, for him to make it sound like it's something new. The Labour leader has already pledged to cancel the Conservative government's scheme to send some asylum seekers to Rwanda. I know Norman said, you said it's only one person, they've been given £3,000. It is a scheme that has existed, that kind of scheme has existed for many of these sort of policies anyway, but it does seem to be having an effect on the ground. Now, Rwanda, which was passed into law last month, and it does seem, especially in the Republic of Ireland, people are fleeing Northern Ireland to escape any possibility of being sent there. But Starmer insists that our asylum system must be rebuilt, but as he really sees the initiative on small boats. So I'm going to come back to you, Norman, because he did talk a little bit about it. He hasn't really told us much about his plan. If he's only going to do something that already exists, does it not smack of being somewhat disingenuous?
I don't think what he said so far will lead to any reduction in the number of people coming across the channel. That's the bottom line, I suppose. But, you know, we've got to keep our eye on the main picture, which is the number of people coming into this country legally. It far, far dwarfs the number coming across the channel. What we had, here's a piece from the paper today, 211 people crossed the channel on Thursday, and the total up this year is 9,000. I mean, the number of people going to Rwanda will be less than that, even by the government's own figure. But the number of people coming in legally is, what, 1 million or thereabouts? It's a huge number. Yeah. So if we're actually looking at the
745,000.
That's a net figure. If we're looking at the debate about whether or not we want to have people coming in the country or not, we need to debate about legal migration, not about illegal migration. That's almost a side issue.
Well, I think it's not a side issue because people are dying. Also, it's a business, and the numbers will only get bigger. So you might look at it and think, oh, that's not many.
A tiny proportion.
Yeah, but a tiny proportion. But if you look at the way it's continued to increase, almost doubling every few years, that will be a problem later on, and we need to get hold of it when it is a small proportion. What are your thoughts, Daniel?
Well, I think first of all, I do think there's a big difference. Norman tries to brush it over between legal and illegal migration, because the British people have a great sense of fairness and a sense of not queue jumping. And the fact is, if you've applied and you've got permission to come here because you've got a job, whether that's a good thing, whether the numbers are too high or not, that doesn't make you a bad person. It doesn't make you somebody that is resented individually for what you're doing. But if you're actually jumping the queue and coming over in boats like that, I think there's a strong sense that these people don't deserve to be here, they don't merit being here. I think the real problem Starmer has, though, is that there are quite a lot of people in his party who actually don't want to stop the boats. They think that we should have open borders. They think we should be welcoming refugees from all over the world, just as there are lots of people in the United States who believe that about America. And so I think really the problem with the Labour Party is that when they get into power, we don't know where they're going to be on this question of illegal migration, whether they're actually really going to try and stop it, or whether that part of the party, that part of the left in this country who rush out to Calais and encourage them and welcome them and so on, are going to be the dominant force and putting pressure on him. That's what I think is the real worry about.
You think he actually wants the open borders?
I don't think he does. I don't think he's got... I mean, I don't know what Keir Starmer's personal views are on anything particularly, because what he says is always judged, in my view, according to which part of his party, which particular focus group or whatever it's going to appeal to. And I think on this, he's appealing to that part of the country, the majority, I think, which feels that this is unfair queue jumping. But don't forget that he's surrounded by people in the party who actually believe that welcoming refugees from other countries is something we should be doing, well, however they get here.
Yes, until they move to their backyard and then suddenly things all change, don't they?
You've got a nice big house and champagne socialist. These things don't worry you very much.
Yeah, not at all, do they? But if you just tuned in, welcome. It's just coming up to 21 minutes after 3 o'clock. This is GB News. We are the People's Channel. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. Coming up, civil service diversity jobs will be banned in a new crackdown on Whitehall woke spending. But next, new Labour MP Natalie Elphicke has been accused of lobbying ministers in attempts to interfere in her former husband's sexual assault case.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
Many of the people that you had invited to come and speak were people who've been elected in their own countries. I'm thinking of people like Suella Braverman. I'm thinking of Nigel Farage, who has been a member of the European Parliament, of course, had an enormous impact on British politics. And Viktor Orban, who has been elected and re-elected. Many people may not care for the Prime Minister of Hungary, but he's certainly an elected person.
And in addition, we had about 15 to 16 members of the European Parliament who were also elected, and they really live in Brussels. And you would imagine that Brussels, being the head of the capital of the EU, would allow elected members of its own parliament to have an opportunity to voice their views. So I think what was very interesting about this is that the mayors overplayed their hands, so that because they overplayed their hands, all public opinion became entirely on our side. It was so evident, so transparent, that this was really an attempt to use the police instead of arguments to react to our conference, that it was a real direct threat, and it is still a direct threat to the freedom of assembly and to free speech.
So how do you think it leaves it? Is it more likely or less likely that there'll be future bans?
I think this was a trial run. What I'm really worried about is that if the future of democracy and free speech depends on the ruling of one judge, and you have to remember that 3 other judges ruled against us, then democracy is in big trouble. What worries me absolutely is that a strong body of political opinion amongst established politicians believes that it is okay to cancel conferences and to crush the people's opinions and prevent the freedom of assembly. Democracy actually depends on these foundational values.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And why it matters to you. From your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you. Good afternoon, Britain. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
All right, it's 25 after 3 o'clock. If you just tuned in, welcome. Good afternoon. I know it's a beautiful day, but we're live on TV, online and on digital radio. This is GB News. Now, Nana Akua MP, she's been all over the news. She's been accused of lobbying ministers in an attempt to interfere with her former husband's sexual assault case. Then Justice Secretary Sir Robert Buckland alleges she asked him to move the 2020 trial to Charlie Elphicke to a lower profile court, apparently to spare him public scrutiny. A Labour spokesperson said that she totally rejects the characterisation of the meeting. Ms Elphicke defected from the Conservatives to Labour last week. But is this a blessing in disguise for the Tories? After all, they just got a shot of her. Joining me now is GB News political correspondent Catherine Forster. How are the Tories taking the defection of Nana Akua?
Yes, well, it's very curious, isn't it? Because they're mystified, frankly, because she was seen as being really right on the right of the party. She was a member of the European Research Group. She supported Liz Truss, so really the last person that you would have expected to go over to Labour, particularly as a Conservative MP for Dover up until Wednesday. She spent plenty of time rubbishing Keir Starmer and his plans, or lack of a plan, to stop the boats. But now she's suddenly gone about some sort of conversion and says that Rishi Sunak's plan isn't going to work and that she puts more faith in Keir Starmer. Now, Lord Cameron today has been saying that this is naked opportunism, by Labour as much as anything. Lots of Tory MPs mystified and not very impressed. And I have to say, with Labour MPs, a lot of them pretty horrified at the fact that she's been welcomed into the Labour Party. People like Rosie Duffield and Jess Phillips, who've worked a lot on, countering violence against women and girls. And the Labour Party has taken someone who stood by her sex offender husband, who was jailed for 2 years, and continued to defend him after he had been convicted. And these allegations today in the Sunday Times, really pretty damning, that she went to Robert Buckland, the then Justice Secretary, and expressed concerns before his trial that the court was too high profile, that the judge was too high profile. Robert Buckland was having none of it. But then later, after he was convicted, the Sunday Times is also reporting that she tried again. This time she couldn't get near Robert Buckland, but she told the chief whip and wanted them to intervene, that his living conditions in prison were basically not good enough, that his bed was not comfortable enough, and that his pillows were not comfortable enough. So this story not going away at all.
Not at all, is it? That'll be interesting how the others respond. Thank you very much, Catherine. There's Catherine Forster. She's our GB News' political correspondent. Well, joining me in the clash, Lord Daniel Moylan and also Norman Baker. Daniel, Nana Akua, is she a bonus to the Conservative Party?
Oh, look, can I just say a couple of things about Nana Akua? Now, I don't want to defend her, but I'm going to defend her a little bit. First of all this stuff about her seeking to influence things in relation to her husband is not new. Very little of it's new, because we all know that she and a couple of other MPs wrote a letter to the judge at the time because they were disciplined for it by whatever the committee's called in the House of Commons. They were suspended for a short period as a punishment for doing that. So we know that she was doing this. All that we're finding out today is that she also spoke to Robert Buckland, who now seems sort of shocked. Well, I know Robert Buckland, and he can cope with this. He hasn't needed counselling to cope with this. Second thing I want to say is I find it very hard, I'll be perfectly honest, to criticise a wife who's trying to do her best for her husband, who's in difficulties. I don't see what's wrong with that. I fully expect her to do this.
Well,
why are we all sitting there getting hung up on some notion of some abstract notion?
Yeah, it's not so much she defended him, but it was the wording that she used. It was more victim-blaming, so she said it's because he's a trump.
No, it's not that she defended him. It's that she was... When she spoke to Robert Buckland, she was trying to do something for her husband. He didn't do it, which is quite right. He's tough enough to say no. He said no. That's the right thing to do. And presumably then she went away. And maybe she went, and then she complained to the chief whip about his pillows. I mean, that's ridiculous. I mean, why would you complain? The chief whip is not a matron in a prison. He doesn't fix pillows. So she may have mentioned it to the chief whip, and I think there's... So I want to stick up a little bit for her. On the other hand, of course, it is totally mad that Natalie Elphicke is a member of the Labour Party. And one of the problems here is that there are a whole load of people in the House of Commons, and I'm afraid she's probably one of them, including on the Conservative benches, who really ought not to be there. I mean, why is she there? She's there because she stepped in to take her husband's place when he had to stand down. I mean, why was that? Does that qualify her to be an MP who knows what she's doing?
Yeah.
How do the Conservatives select their candidates is something that many Conservatives have been asking over the last few years, and good answers are very few and far between.
I think this is an example of a very bad selection. Norman Baker.
Look, nobody comes out of this, in my view, with any credit very much. First of all, she's not a Labour Party person in philosophical terms. She has gone there because she wants to get her own back on Rishi Sunak or some other personal explanation. It cannot be for policy reasons because she's far to the right of the Tory party. Secondly, the Labour Party can't get any credit for this because he's exploited the Conservative Party's weakness, and here's an opportunity to have a bash at the Prime Minister. So there's no credit to them on that. This issue that's come up today, Daniel's quite right. There was a suspension by the Standards Committee in the House of Commons, so that's not new. Why has it come in today? Presumably because Robert Buckland or someone in the Conservative Party has leaked this to the Sunday Times and got a story out of it. They're not concerned about it, because if they had been concerned, it would have been in the papers before she defected. So this is simply to have a go at the Labour Party. So they came out of no credit, and neither did the Daily Mail, I might say, or the Mail on Sunday, because they were busy saying not very long ago that judges were enemies of the state because they didn't like their position on Brexit. Now they're in the paper saying how we must defend the judges, how terrible it is to influence them.
Well, I mean, I don't know which stories you're referring to specifically on the Daily Mail, but those will be story focused, so it's not overall.
They're inconsistent, though.
Well, no, but opinions change and also stories change. So in different cases, you might judge the behaviour of a judge in one way and in another case another.
You either
in this case,
sorry,
but they're not. But first of all, they're not a homogenous group of people who think exactly the same at the Daily Mail. So somebody might write one thing that's an opinion piece in their view. That's all I will say about
page to paper. You either believe the judiciary is independent or you don't. I mean, that's a very fundamental point.
Well, I don't know which story you're talking to, so we'll brush that to one side and stick with Natalie Elphicke. Yeah, right. So anyway, what are your thoughts? GBviews at gbnews.com/your say. On the way, Harry and Meghan. What do you think? Did Charles... he didn't see Harry didn't see Charles during a trip to London this week. But who didn't agree to see who? That's the question. But first, let's get your latest headlines with Tatiana Sanchez.
Nana, thank you very much. The top stories from the GB newsroom. Claims a British-Israeli hostage has died in Gaza are being urgently investigated by the Foreign Office. Hamas says Nadav Popplewell, who was kidnapped during the October attack in Israel, was injured during an airstrike a month ago. Undated footage of the 51-year-old with a black eye was also released. The government says it's seeking more information after the terrorist group made the claim in a video. A third man has been arrested on suspicion of murder following a house fire in Wolverhampton. Emergency services were called to a property in Dunstall Hill area at 2 a.m. yesterday, where two women, both in their 20s, were pronounced dead at the scene. Police have been granted extra time to question two other men. Aged 19 and 22, it's believed they were known to the victims. Tory defector Natalie Elphicke denies she lobbied the Justice Secretary over her then-husband's sex offences trial. Sir Robert Buckland claims the MP, who crossed the floor to Labour, requested the case be moved to a lower-profile court. Speaking to the Sunday Times, he says she was told the request was completely inappropriate. Her spokesperson refuted the accusation, describing it as nonsense in the Mail on Sunday. And weather warnings for thunderstorms are in place across the country, with Britain's warm spell set to end this afternoon. The Met Office has issued a new alert for rain in southwest England. Eastern areas of Northern Ireland can also expect a heavy downpour, with a warning in place until 6 a.m. on Tuesday. For the latest stories, sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts. Now back to Nana.
Thank you, Tatiana. Right, there's still plenty of time to win our biggest cash prize so far. It's a whopping £20,000. Now, imagine having that in your bank account this summer, but you've got to be in the draw for your chance to win, and here's how.
Don't miss your chance to win our biggest cash prize so far. A totally terrific £20,000 in tax-free cash to make your summer spectacular. You could use that cash to splash out on a holiday, make the garden glam, buy a new car, or just save it for a rainy day. Whatever you'd spend £20,000 on, make sure you don't miss the chance to make it yours. For another chance to win £20,000 in tax-free cash, text WIN to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB05 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 31st of May. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Yes, good luck indeed. Next, civil service diversity jobs will be banned in a new crackdown on Whitehall woke spending.
I'm Patrick Christys. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Between 1955 and 1989, an average of 55 nuclear tests were conducted across the globe each year. More than 30,000 young British and Commonwealth servicemen served at British test locations in Australia and the Pacific Ocean. But in the years since, those who were involved say they've been ignored and lied to about their exposure to radiation. For decades, Lab Rats International has represented the millions across the world exposed to fallout from the testing programmes and the families who still suffer today from illness and deformities. Last year, the government unveiled the Nuclear Test Medal, recognising the military, civilian and overseas staff and personnel who participated in Britain's nuclear testing programme in the 1950s. But for Lab Rats founder Alan Owen, whose own father was a nuclear test veteran, the work is only just beginning. In September, they launched a legal challenge to the Ministry of Defence to provide the test veterans full medical records, which they say they've been denied access to.
We sit in this bubble as the nuclear test veteran community, fighting against the establishment. And they will say, you know, ministers will go in Parliament and say, all you've got to do is apply for your medical records and they'll give them to you. You know, it just doesn't happen. It's not a reality. They're not there to as easy, as accessible as just applying. They will fight you all the way. They will delay it.
In response, a government spokesperson said, "We are grateful to all service personnel who participated in the British nuclear testing programme, which is why we have formally recognised them with an official medal. Nuclear test veterans who believe they have suffered ill health due to service have the existing and long-standing right to apply for no-fault compensation under the War Pensions Scheme." The fight for these veterans and their families lives on because thousands who came before never got the recognition and justice for their service.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Emily Carver. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. If you just tuned in, where have you been? There's 21 minutes to go just in this hour. 2 hours and 21 minutes to go, actually, to be fair. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. We are the People's Channel. This is The Clash. Next up, civil service diversity jobs will be banned in a new crackdown on Whitehall woke spending. Hallelujah. The Telegraph are reporting that in a radical overhaul aimed at ending the backdoor politicisation of the service, mandarins will be ordered not to hire any new staff dedicated to boosting diversity, equality and inclusion, but instead they'll be focusing on scrapping diversity drives. Should the government then, do you think they should be focusing on bigger matters, or is this a big matter indeed? Well, welcome to my clashers, Lord Daniel Moylan, who's a Conservative member of the House of Lords, and Norman Baker, former Liberal Democrat Minister. Norman Baker, I'm going to start with you. Diversity, EDI, DIE.
Well, the first thing to say is, yes, there are far more important issues, whether it's the state of the economy or the NHS or the war in Gaza or a whole range of other matters. So it isn't the most important thing for the government to be concentrating on. However, there are doubtless people in civil service who are doing jobs which aren't terribly useful, and it's probably worth looking at those. I'm not against the civil service looking at diversity and inclusion, but I think they should be part of a wider role that someone has, rather than someone being specifically in that post. Because if you're specifically in that post, then you have the reason to keep that post going. If it's part of a wider human resources topic that you're dealing with, then you can incorporate it in your wider thinking. So I'm not against it, but it needs to be partly focused in the proper way. I don't believe the Telegraph is right to say it's backdoor politicisation. That's a stretch too far.
Do you not think? I mean, a lot of these Stonewall and all these little groups that are coming in with their own narratives to try and sort of infiltrate policy, you don't think that some of them are there?
I think there's definitely an attempt to influence policy. I think it's perfectly proper in democracy for groups of any sort to try and influence the behaviour of government and however they do it. So I'm not against that. I don't happen to agree with...
Not by becoming civil servants.
No, absolutely. Not by becoming civil servants.
But that's flooding their ideology into the service.
Issue here, Norm.
Yeah.
Well, I agree that if people from Stonewall or anyone else are trying to become civil servants in order to enact their policy, that would be wrong. But there's nothing wrong with any...
No, if you go around some departments, you'll find... Say, a department like DEFRA, you'll find a whole host of civil servants working on environmental policy. And if you ask what their CVs are, you'll find out they used to work for Greenpeace or some environmental organisation, some NGO or whatever. And I'm not saying in any sense, in any individual's case, that they're not behaving perfectly properly, because I wouldn't have that information. But that is exactly what is happening, is that people with a background of lobbying and campaigning move very easily between that NGO sector and the civil service, just as they move between that sector and politics. Look at the guy just elected for Labour in the Blackpool South by-election. He's never worked for anybody except for the Labour Party or for NGO-type charities that are basically lobbying-type charities. So it's in politics and it's in the civil service as well. I'm just saying this is the way it is.
I'm not... look, I mean, people come to a civil service job or any job in the public sector or become an MP with a background. Everybody has a background of some sort. There are plenty of people at DEFRA...
But what they don't have is a background in the Labour Party, for example, of working class, working in a factory. Very rarely now do they have a background of working in a trades union, the way they used to. In the Conservative Party, there are very few people from a business or finance background. Everybody in all the main parties, and I haven't looked too closely at your own party, just as well for you, I suppose, on this occasion, but everybody is coming from the same background, which is that they've basically worked for a political party, they've worked as a special advisor, or they've worked in some sort of lobbying organisation or NGO. It's very, very bad for democracy.
There's an issue about how potential candidates for any party are selected, and I have to say that I think the Lib Dem arrangements are rather better than they are in the other two parties. However, in terms of the civil service, of course there are some civil servants who work for Greenpeace or whatever, but there are equally civil servants who work for big multinational companies who then try to ensure that the policy that they grew up with, if you like, before they were civil service is enacted. We've seen DEFRA, for example, continually ban neonicotinoids, which are very harmful to bees. Who is arguing for that? The companies who make those particular products. So, of course, people in the civil service come from all sorts of backgrounds, and they bring their own agenda with them. They can't help it.
Well, let me just say also, Nana, I'm not totally convinced by this. Let me tell you why I think this is important. Leave aside the whole question of what woke means and the fact that some of these people have been lobbying, for example, the Stonewall people, to do physical and mental harm to children permanently, and that's what's been going on with the gender reassignment for children. But leave all that aside. The key question, in my view, is whether a government can actually have a civil service which works for the government of the day, or whether the civil service is working for itself, tolerating the elected government of the day. Now, here already there's a huge loophole, because if I believe the newspaper article in the Daily Telegraph which reports this, it says under the plans there will no longer be any jobs in Whitehall devoted solely to diversity. So there won't be any people who do that only. But that doesn't mean to say there won't still be lots of people doing this as part of another job.
But I think that is the point, though. If, as Norman said, if that is your sole role, you actually need to sort of make work for yourself, which is where they're finding these ridiculous little training sessions to do this and to do that. Whereas if you are, say, goes back where it should be, which I think is just HR.
Yes.
You have an HR department and you start to make sure that you've got a nice diverse workforce. You don't need one person or a load of people.
You don't need an HR department.
Well, I don't necessarily think you do, but
you don't need an HR department in the modern sense.
I do agree with that, but what I'm saying is we don't need somebody solely focused on diversity and inclusion.
No.
But it's the same with us. We've got loads still to come here on GB News, just coming out to 46 minutes after 3 o'clock. On my way, Nana's Niggle. Why on earth a global singing competition has become so political? But next, according to The Times, Prince Harry, the Duke of Sussex, did not see Charles during a trip to London this week, but reportedly there are different versions of who asked or did not ask to see who. Stay tuned.
Hello, welcome to your GB News weather update brought to you by the Met Office. For the outlook, drier in the east but turning unsettled in the west and also feeling cooler as we go into Monday. So high pressure is going to be moving its way eastwards. We do have some weather fronts that's bringing a focus for some showers or longer spells of rain through the rest of today. And we do have some warnings in force as well for thunderstorm. Thunderstorms are going to be pushing their way northwards, affecting northern England and also into Scotland. Some of these are going to be quite heavy at times, giving hail and thunder. Elsewhere, turning drier, some low cloud across western parts, clearest in the east, but temperatures still ranging around 10 or 11 degrees. So it is going to be a mild start as we start Monday, but a bit of an east-west split in the weather. Once that low cloud generally clears across much of England and Wales, it will turn drier and brighter. Showers coming into Scotland, but further west we have an area of low pressure bringing outbreaks of rain across Northern Ireland, western parts of England and also into South Wales too. So it is going to be feeling cooler for all, highs of up to maybe 20 or 22 degrees. As we go through Tuesday, that rain shifts its focus further towards the north and east with showers following, and then that really sets the scene for the outlook as well. So longer spells of rain on Tuesday, Wednesday and Thursday, sunny spells, scattered showers, not as warm but still highs of 20 or 21 degrees.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
We're GB News, and we come from a proud tradition of British journalism.
That's why I'm so excited to be here. It's something so new.
The first news channel to be launched in Britain in over 30 years.
Launched to represent the views of the British people.
To go where other broadcasters refuse to go.
How did you find out about the story in the first place?
Launched with one aim.
To be the fearless champion of Britain.
It's an absolutely fantastic atmosphere here.
This is GB News.
The People's Channel. GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
49 minutes after 3 o'clock. If you've just joined us, welcome. This is GB News. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. Don't forget as well, you can stream the show live on YouTube or you can download the GB News app. It's completely free. Next up, though, Prince Harry, the Duke of Sussex, did not see Charles during the trip to London this week. It was reported, according to the Times, there are different versions of the story, depending on who asked who, whether they should see who. It's all a bit complicated. The King agreed, apparently, to a request from the Duke of Sussex to stay in a royal residence for the last week of his trip to London, mindful that his younger son no longer has an official UK residence. That's what's reported. In the event, however, Harry is thought to have chosen to stay in a hotel during his 3-day visit. Meanwhile, an official scheme to deliver portraits of the King has been extended, and it now includes hospital, Coast Guard centres, job centres, universities, Church of England, churches and other public institutions. Well, let's welcome back to my clashers Lord Daniel Moylan, Conservative member of the House of Lords, and also Norman Baker, former Liberal Democrat minister. Right, Daniel, what do you think then? Have you been following this royal story with Prince Harry coming to the UK and not seeing his father?
No. To be perfectly honest, I don't find the whole Prince Harry thing terribly interesting. And let's put this in an historical perspective. This is mild stuff. I mean, George III in the 18th century famously got on extremely badly with all his sons, who were absolutely brutal to him and completely horrible during his long reign. And Edward III not only deposed his father, he was almost certainly party to the plot to murder him later. So, you know, just not turning up while the King's at a garden party and so on. This is all very mild stuff. It's not very interesting in the historical perspective. Fathers and sons argue, that includes kings. He hasn't actually set about to achieve any of his historical precedents. He's just sort of going to live in California, which is relatively mild compared to what has happened in the past.
Norman Baker.
Well, I'm getting Prince Harry fatigue, to be honest with you, in terms of the stories which continually appear in the papers about him and Meghan. I mean, it is peculiar, I suppose, that he was over here from California and 2 miles away from the King, and they didn't see each other. I'm sure they could have arranged it had they wanted to. But ultimately, in a way, it's a family matter. He's divorced himself from the royal family, or divorced himself from his royal role, at least. He's living in California now in some sort of different lifestyle. He's entitled to do that if he wants to do that. And I think if he wants to see the King and the King wants to see him, that's up to them, really.
But don't you think it's a bit sad, though, the whole story, the whole situation? It is a bit, isn't it?
But as Daniel actually says, you know, sorry to be agreeing with him, but, you know, families are families, and people do disagree with each other in families, and that's what happens.
So what are your views on this, the portraits then going up in different places of the King, bearing in mind that Oxford University, was it Magdalen College, where the students were worried that the pictures of the Queen would upset foreign students,
well,
remind them of colonialisation?
Pictures because they might upset foreign students. That's a rubbish reason not to have a picture. What I would say is that there's £8 million being spent on this. Of course, whenever you spend public money, you've got to justify it. That is an allocation. Many people will support it. Others will say, could we spend it a different way? I note that the Church of England places of worship are going to get the portrait, but not other religious buildings. And of course, Charles has always said he wants to be a defender of all faiths rather than just one faith, so that's in a way undermining his own position.
Well, maybe they're not interested in that. What do you think, Daniel?
Well, I think it's marvellous that there should be more portraits of the King everywhere. The King is a sign of unity for the country. We all have great admiration for him. We're thinking about him at this time when his health is suffering. And I think it's tremendous. Public buildings have always had portraits of the monarch in them. And of course, they should have this official portrait. It should be hanging there proudly.
Absolutely. Well, listen, let's see. Lots of you have been getting in touch with your thoughts on gbnews.com/your say. James, on the subject of DEI, diversity, equality and inclusion, or DI, as people like to call it, he said, we managed perfectly well in the 1970s, 80s, 90s and 2000s without DEI. We don't need it now. We never did. Just another way to squander more taxpayer money and appear even more woke. David says, again, another Generic GB News show, same old yawn, but keep all that money on. Get out of here. Listen, you come and sit here, Daniel. You give it a go and see how generic it is. And actually, the show before copied me. I did. Mine was different to this before. And also, Brenda says about the equality DEI, she said if they're sticking within the equality law, then there is no need whatsoever for it. Absolutely right. If they're sticking within the law, we shouldn't need DEI.
We're sticking within the law, but come back to one of your correspondents there, or viewers. All right in the 1970s. It wasn't all right in the 1970s. We had racism in the 1970s. We had departments full of white men with no women in them. We've got a long way in this country.
Yeah, but we don't need to go that far.
No, we don't need to go that far. Well, we do need to recognise there's an issue.
No, well, it was an issue, but it's been dealt with quite nicely. And I think at the moment DEI has just gone way too far and actually has gone to the extremes and is quite divisive now. If you just tuned in, you're with me, I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. Still to come, the Great British Debate this hour. I'm asking, what do you think I'm asking? An interesting question. Stay tuned and find out. First, your weather, but on the way, my monologue. I'm talking about the Eurovision Song Contest. Did you watch it? So-called peaceful, lovely people protesting for peace. Did you see them? Stay tuned. Nana's Niggle is on the way.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, welcome to your GB News weather update brought to you by the Met Office. For the outlook, drier in the east but turning unsettled in the west and also feeling cooler as we go into Monday. So high pressure is going to be moving its way eastwards. We do have some weather fronts that's bringing a focus for some showers or longer spells of rain through the rest of today. And we do have some warnings in force as well for thunderstorm. Thunderstorms are going to be pushing their way northwards, affecting northern England and also into Scotland. Some of these are going to be quite heavy at times, giving hail and thunder. Elsewhere, turning drier, some low cloud across western parts, clearest in the east, but temperatures still ranging around 10 or 11 degrees. So it is going to be a mild start as we start Monday, but a bit of an east-west split in the weather. Once that low cloud generally clears across much of England and Wales, it will turn drier and brighter. Showers coming into Scotland, but further west we have an area of low pressure bringing outbreaks of rain across Northern Ireland, western parts of England and also into South Wales too. So it is going to be feeling cooler for all, highs of up to maybe 20 or 22 degrees. As we go through Tuesday, that rain shifts its focus further towards the north and east with showers following, and then that really sets the scene for the outlook as well. So longer spells of rain on Tuesday, Wednesday and Thursday, sunny spells, scattered showers, not as warm but still highs of 20 or 21 degrees.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
You really could be our next big winner with an incredible £20,000 in tax-free cash to play with this summer. What would you spend that on? Well, whilst you're thinking about it, listen to some of our previous winners getting that winning phone call from us.
I'm Charles. I'm on £18,000 cash. It was just amazing, and as soon as it goes into your bank account, it just changed. It's a life-changing thing. Just go for it. It's an absolute must. You must try and go for it.
The next winning call could be answered by you. For another chance to win £20,000 in tax-free cash, text PRIZE to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB05 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 31st of May. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to Scotland, home of Humza Yousaf's hate crime law, aka the Clype's Charter.
Clype, a delightfully Scottish word for a grass, a snitch, or in the context of Russell Finley's opening gambit during the hate crime debate at Holyrood last week, reporting your friends, family and neighbours to the police for alleged hate crimes. The SNP responded by doubling down on the new law's ability to protect vulnerable victims.
I am confident that we have robust legislation that will protect those who are vulnerable to harm.
But other victims are emerging in the wake of this new legislation. as the bill moved through Parliament concerned rows of police inundated with vexatious complaints, targeting individuals who had committed no crimes. The first fortnight of the new law gave rise to nearly 9,000 complaints.
The vast majority, at least 95%, have been deemed not to be crimes.
False reporting is nothing new. A social post from Scottish Conservative Murdo Fraser was flagged by a trans rights activist in November.
Police decided that no crime had been committed, but nevertheless that was recorded as a non-crime hate incident.
And Alba Westminster leader Neil Hanvey says he too has been targeted under pre-existing legislation.
I've been the victim of at least one of those complaints, and that's taken up at the time of police officers.
Thick skin can be expected of our elected officials, but what about the public? 74-year-old Morag McDougall-Brown says she was reported to police by a neighbour, and the experience has taken its toll.
I hate to think that anybody like me or similar to my age would ever have to go through this, because I really don't think I will ever go over it.
Hello, good afternoon and welcome to GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua, and for the next 2 hours, me and my panel will be taking on some of the big topics hitting the headlines right now. This show is all about opinion. It's mine, it's theirs, and of course it's yours. We'll be debating, discussing, and at times we will disagree, but no one will be cancelled. So joining me today is she's not a political commentator, she's an author and a broadcaster, Christine Hamilton, who's changed it, and also broadcaster and journalist Danny Kelly. Right, coming up, Nana's niggle on Eurovision and the massive fallout. Then my outside guest, it's always a mystery. I'll give you some clues throughout the show. Plus, in clickbait, who is she though? Look at that. Very nice hair. She's got very famous parents. I'll give you loads more details throughout the show. Also, there's an incredible clip for clickbait. I'll show you bits of that as well throughout the show as well. But up next, let's get your latest news.
Good afternoon to you. It's 4:04. I'm Aaron Armstrong. Claims a British-Israeli hostage has died in Gaza are being urgently investigated by the Foreign Office. Hamas says Nadav Popplewell, who was kidnapped during the October attack in Israel, was injured during an airstrike a month ago. Undated footage of the 51-year-old with a black eye was also released. The government says it's seeking more information after the terrorist group made the claim in a video. Deputy Foreign Secretary Andrew Mitchell is condemning the actions of Hamas.
My heart goes out to the family at this extraordinary time with the barbarism of these appalling terrorists who have treated the family in such a cynical, cruel and heartless way. And we must wait for further information to become available. But what an appalling, dreadful experience for this poor family to have to suffer at the hands of this absolutely dreadful terrorist organisation.
Tory defector Natalie Elphicke denies she lobbied the Justice Secretary over her then-husband's sex offences trial. Sir Robert Buckland claims the MP, who crossed the floor to Labour this week, requested the case be moved to a lower-profile court. Speaking to the Sunday Times, he says she was told the request was completely inappropriate. Her spokesperson has refuted the allegation, describing it as nonsense, in the Mail on Sunday. Ms Elphicke ended the marriage when her husband was convicted of sexually assaulting 2 women, and he was jailed for 2 years. At least 7 people have been killed and another 17 injured, including 2 children, after an apartment block collapsed in Russia. State media says fragments of a Ukrainian missile, which were downed by Russia's air defence system, landed on the building in the city of Belgorod. Rescue efforts have been hampered because the roof collapsed, with rubble covering emergency services. They've now resumed their effort in a bid to find survivors. A third man's been arrested on suspicion of murder following a house fire in Wolverhampton. Emergency services were called to a property in the Dunstall Hill area at 2 a.m. yesterday, where 2 women, both in their 20s, were pronounced dead at the scene. 4 people were also injured. Police have been granted extra time to question 2 men arrested yesterday, aged 19 and 22. It's believed they were known to the women. Applications have opened for funded childcare, an expansion on the government's current offer for working families. Parents of children who are older than 9 months from September are now eligible for support. Parents of 2-year-olds have been able to access 15 hours of funded care since last month. The full rollout will see support increase to 30 hours a week by September next year. Labour's rejected a report claiming its fair pay agreements in social care could cost taxpayers £4.2 billion a year. The party says it wants to empower adult social care professionals and the trade unions that represent them so they can negotiate better deals. The Policy Exchange think tank says the total cost of the proposed wage rise in 2023 to 24 would have been at least £9.9 billion per year. Labour says the claims are based on fiction and they don't reflect party policy. And weather warnings for thunderstorms are now in place across the country, with Britain's warm spell seemingly ending this afternoon. Temperatures are still expected to reach around 27 degrees in central parts of the country anytime, well, around now, before the wet weather begins to roll in later. The Met Office has issued new alerts for rain in southwest England. Heavy downpours expected to hit eastern areas of Northern Ireland, with a warning in place until 6 a.m. on Tuesday. And if you are doing something else and not watching the screen right now, stop and pay some attention. Have a look at this. 2 skydivers have become the first to navigate their way through Tower Bridge wearing wingsuits. Barely believable, isn't it? The pair from Austria jumped from a helicopter and flew through Tower Bridge along the Thames, eventually reaching a top speed of 152 miles per hour before successfully winging their way between the bridge towers. Now, the stunt followed extensive training in Oxfordshire, which involved the use of cranes to simulate the structure. Very impressive.
Feeling good. I'm feeling really good. It was quite intense, I would say. But yeah, we were well prepared and I'm pretty happy now.
Marco first, the first to do it. Now, for the latest stories, you can sign up to our alerts on the screen. There's a QR code. Our website also have the details. Now it's back to Nana.
Thank you, Aaron. Right, it's just coming up to 7 minutes after 4 o'clock. If you've just tuned in, welcome. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. We are the People's Channel. I'm Nana Akua. Now, this was our entry at last night's Eurovision Song Contest. Tone deaf, embarrassing. Yet the winner was able to sing on a spinning thing and still sing in tune. Yeah, exactly. But outside, a whole different ballgame. Queers for Palestine, described on their website as a vibrant, diverse liberation movement that is part of the Palestinian anti-colonial movement, rubbed shoulders with the proscribed terrorist organisation, which is odd, really, given the historically bad treatment towards people who are gay by the Palestinian government, Hamas. Greta Thunberg was hauled away by police as demonstrators clashed with armed riot police outside the final venue in Sweden and yelled "Shame on you" at fans before the show kicked off. Greta, a victim of bullying herself, became the bully by associating her name with a demonstration that saw protesters attacking a police convoy escorting Eden Golan to Eurovision. Eden had been holed up in her hotel, unable to leave due to the sheer hatred that surrounded it as hundreds of protesters gathered outside hurling abuse. Their behaviour was not much better inside. She was booed. Eden Golan, Israel's entry to Eurovision, a 21-year-old, had to be protected by 100 police on guard outside the venue. Yet many of these people purport to be on the side of peace and diversity and inclusion, the caring liberals, championing minority groups. They police language. Yet these are the saints, people who believe they hold the moral high ground. Pretty ugly, eh? But this is just the tip of the iceberg. Here in the UK, these passive-aggressive hate marches have been becoming a weekly occurrence, disrupting businesses and intimidating Jewish people and the general public if you dare to stand up against this rabble, who in the whole are supporting a cause that many are ignorant of.
When Hamas invaded Israel on the 7th of October, what was your initial reaction to that?
I don't believe they did they? Hamas? I think so. Honestly, I think I need to be a bit more clued up on everything that's going on. So I feel like I'm not really qualified to answer that too well.
I mean, I'm not sure if I've seen anything that shows that that's actually happened or actually correct.
These are people protesting, yes, at a pro-Palestinian protest. And it's not just towards Israel we see this. Groups like Just Stop Oil and Animal Rebellion and Greenpeace employ these guerrilla tactics all the time, covering Rishi Sunak's house with blankets and protesting outside Tobias Armwood's home. And it seems this behaviour transcends the youth. Look at this pair in their 70s, smashing the glass of the Magna Carta. Intimidating, passive-aggressive behaviour that often spills out into aggression. Is this really freedom of speech? If that is the case, whose freedom? Right, well, before we get stuck into the debate, here's what else is coming up today. For the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, is it time to ban extreme protests? The government's advisor on political violence is set to recommend banning so-called extreme protest groups like Just Stop Oil and Palestine Action due to their use of criminal tactics to achieve their aims. But could this threaten the fundamental right to protest? So for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, is it time to ban extreme protests? Then at 4:50 is Worldview. We'll cross live to Los Angeles to speak to the host of the Politics People podcast, Paul Dudridge, about the latest on Donald Trump's hush money trial, where the former president has been told he faces going to prison for violating a gag order for the 10th time. Then at 5, my outside guest. Now, this week is an American-born singer whose parents, the cult television series Thunderbirds, Stingray and Captain Scarlet. Yes, can you guess who this is? That's coming up in the next hour. As ever, tell me what you think on everything we're discussing. Go to gbnews.com/your say or tweet me at GBNews. Right, let's get started. Let's welcome again to my panel author and broadcaster Christine Hamilton and also broadcaster and journalist Danny Kelly. Right, I'm going to start with you, Christine Hamilton. Oh, nice to see you, Christine.
Nice to be here, Nana.
So what do you think of all this? Did you watch Eurovision last night?
What do you think?
I think you did, yes.
No, I didn't.
I thought you might have done. You had a few drinks.
No, absolutely didn't. I was busy anyway. I was... doesn't matter what I was doing, but I was busy.
Oh, yeah.
Well, all right.
I'll
tell you, we live near the badminton horse trials, so every year we have 8, sometimes 9 people to stay for 4 days.
Crikey.
I know. They go off to a pub most nights, but last night I said I would give them dinner. So having got up early yesterday morning to get their breakfast, they all had breakfast at the same time at 8 o'clock. I then did dinner, and then I had to be up early this morning. I did not watch Eurovision. Sorry, it's a long
That would have been
answer.
fun. You should have done that with
But
your
I
guest.
wouldn't have watched it anyway. And actually, I was on GB News last night too. So
right. Well, so what do you think of this then?
I think, well, the whole thing. I despair of the whole thing. It ought to be. It used to be a wonderful celebration of popular music throughout Europe. You know, remember the good old days? Cliff Richard, Sandy.
I don't remember those days.
I do. I remember that. Not
Sandy. You must have heard of.
Oh, I've heard of Cliff Richard, but I don't remember those days.
Save all your kisses for Johnny Logan. What's another year for someone who's left? Bucks Fizz.
Now, look at it now. It has degenerated.
Nana's going to take her dress off in a second and do the twist.
You wish.
This is a family show.
But that's what they did in Bucks Fizz, didn't they?
It's the skirts, not the full dress.
No, it has I probably said enough.
No, carry on.
Well, it's degenerated, hasn't it, now? It's a political thing, the music. I mean, honestly, our British entry... how could we possibly think... Just look at the staging, look at the colouring, look... I mean, you know, how uninteresting and uninspiring was that? I mean, words fail me. And he's the fellow who said that he thought the Union flag was divisive and he wanted to reclaim it. Excuse me. So no, I wouldn't. I mean, I think it's ridiculous. And what's the Australia doing in there anyway? Apparently they like Eurovision, so they've been allowed to join.
Well, they've got the union flag in their thing, haven't they, Danny?
But you know, I think the treatment of this young 21-year-old Israeli, I think it was atrocious. And this is just typical of the liberal left, who feel almost like they have this impenetrability.
Don't worry about the wording.
The moral authority.
They're impenetrable. They're impenetrable to any sort of criticism if they have this moral position and if they're taking, like, if you like, somebody, the smaller person's side. So they can be as nasty as they want. That's why people on the left will call you a racist, a fascist, all of this, because they're on the right side. And it's better to be safe than sorry. You know, their mantra is better be safe than sorry, ruin someone's life just in case they're a baddie and all of that. So I felt desperately sorry for this girl. When I woke up this morning at 8 o'clock, she was already back in Israel. That tells you all you need to know. She should be in, where was it? Sweden. She should be in Sweden. She should be giving press conferences. She should be walking around the fabulous city of Malmo. She should be enjoying her moments, although she didn't win. But everybody else, nobody else would have had to fly back. She won the public vote. She didn't win the international vote. Yeah, I watched the song. I thought she was brilliant.
Her song was
She was brilliant. And I presume you saw Ollie Alexander then.
No, I can't watch that,
He was out of tune.
No, I can't.
Totally out of tune. The thing was set in a toilet, right?
Yeah.
And there's
Was it
five,
really?
That's the idea. There were 5 other men there, and one was hanging upside down, and he was sort of like stroking this guy's chest. And I just thought, you know, if he'd spent more time on the actual vocals rather than the stage...
No, it's not family viewing. I mean, you got this lad, because I saw a bit of it on the telly this morning. You're right, they've got these semi-naked lads writhing around, all effeminate, and they're in a public toilet. It's as if
black paint on their tongues as well.
Mincing around. It's not family viewing.
Who chooses our entry? I mean, who are the complete prat idiots, call them what you like, who chose that to represent us?
It might have been...
I think it's a public vote.
Well, if it's the great British public, well, more fool you is all I can say.
But they're not given a very good choice there, let's be honest. And I think when they do it, I don't think they do it sort of like it's a live thing. I think they do it sort of in a way where they've done auto-tune or something, so he sounds a lot better than he does. Because, honestly, I listened to that. His song was in between 2 incredible singers, and you just thought, what weak vocals.
I think we used to have heats, didn't we? And people would go through, and Cliff Richard would emerge. I mean, why can't we go back to that again?
Just get back to the serious point. You had thousands of people protesting about the presence of one 20-year-old Israeli woman, and that's what collective punishment is about. They basically are collectively punishing all Israelis. Nobody knows her view on Zionism. Nobody knows her view on the Palestinian conflict, but they are assuming that she's a baddie, and because she's in that bubble of being a baddie, they can be as horrible as they want to her.
But that is the problem with an awful lot of anti-Jewish feeling. They don't care about the person. They're Jewish. I hate them. They're wrong. They're terrible. That is the problem.
That's right. That's the ignorance.
That is the.
But I think even worse is that they actually think they hold the moral high ground.
Yeah, they
so
do.
Because they feel that anything goes. So they can call you whatever they want. They can smash up police cars. They can because of the peace. Listen, this is a war. That's what happens in war. It's awful. But let's not forget October the 7th, and actually, if Hamas surrendered, gave back the hostages and stopped firing missiles over to Israel, then this would all be over.
But also, no Jewish people were safe to walk around Malmo. I know obviously it's centred on the singer, but no Jewish people were able to go and take part in it. And you saw the clip just now. Somebody asked those 2 people who were protesting, did they think Hamas... They didn't even know what Hamas... I mean,
don't even know what we're talking about.
God, that sums it up.
Well, that's the worst bit about it. A lot of these people on these hate marches, which I will call them that because that's what it looks like to me, don't know what they're protesting about. They don't even get it. So if you just tuned in 17 minutes after 4 o'clock, this is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. Coming up, Worldview. We'll cross over to America to get the latest on what's going on there. But next, it's time for the Great British Debate this hour, and I'm asking, is it time to ban extreme protest? I've got a poll up right now on X asking you that very question. Is it time to ban extreme protest? Get in touch at gbnews.com/your say. Tell me what you think on everything we're discussing. Cast your vote now.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News. Britain's news channel.
Prince Harry, remember him? He appears to have fully turned his back on the UK as he listed his primary residence as the United States for the very first time in papers published yesterday. So interestingly, Harry listed the date on the formal US residency forms as the 29th of June 2023, last year. So that was the very same day he was kicked out of Frogmore Cottage in Great Windsor Park by his dad, the King. Charlotte, thank you for joining me. Okay. Are we just putting two and two together here with the significance of this date? Because there were stories during the rounds today that Harry chose that date specifically because he was so hurt about being booted out of Frogmore by his dad.
Yeah, I mean, to me it feels like he's trolling his dad a bit, because he could have said that he's been a US resident since 2020 when he quit the UK and moved to the States, but instead he chose the exact day that his dad kicked him out of Frogmore. But the reason his dad kicked him out of Frogmore was because he'd slagged off Camilla in Spare. And, you know, and his dad, apparently it was a really difficult decision for Charles, because, of course, no dad wants to kick their son out of their home. But he went beyond the pale. So Charles took the difficult decision to say, look, Frogmore's been empty for years anyway. We've spent £2.4 million doing it up for you. And now you've, you know, insulted our family in your book, Spare. Why is he so hung up on Frogmore? Because this is the country he was desperate to get away from. This is a house he didn't particularly want to live in and, in fact, didn't live in.
Well, he was forced, by the way, to pay £2.5 million to fund the renovations after it all kicked off. I mean, would that have anything to do with...
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure that sort of galvanised his anger towards the whole situation. He thought he was getting a fantastic freebie. And there was, you know, there were a few reports at the time that Meghan actually thought she was moving into Frogmore House, which is a much grander property. And she sort of felt a bit sort of tricked or confused and hadn't quite realised it was actually a cottage, which is only a mere, I think it was only a mere 8 bedrooms.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Sunday nights on GB News. From 6, Neil Oliver. At 7, it's Free Speech Nation with Andrew Doyle. At 9, Mark Dolan. And at 11, get set for the week ahead with headliners. Tomorrow's papers tonight. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
20 minutes after 4 o'clock. Welcome on board. If you just tuned in, where have you been? It's fine. You're here now. You're forgiven. This is GB News. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. Before the break, we talked a little bit about the Eurovision. What is James saying? James says, oh, yes, we'd also talked about protests. James says, poor, sad little St Greta. After failing to convince anyone with a brain of her delusionary climate change scam, she has now had to find a new cause. So she's moved on to promoting and supporting Islamic terrorism instead. She'd probably argue that she's promoting peace, but to be honest, I mean, you saw the marches. Right, it's time for the Great British Debate this hour, and I'm asking, is it time to ban extreme protest? So-called extreme protest groups like Just Stop Oil and Palestine Action could soon be banned under proposals put forward by the government's advisor on political violence. Lord Walney's upcoming report defines such groups as those which routinely use criminal tactics to try to achieve their aims, and condemns them for using such tactics that create mayhem and hold the public and workers to ransom without fear of consequence. However, whilst the Home Office has said it will consider the proposals once they've been published, Just Stop Oil condemned them, saying the government were the real dangerous radicals who were endangering us all with their climate policies. Crikey, they would say that, wouldn't they? So for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, is it time to ban extreme protests? But before we get into that, let's cross live to Malmö in Sweden and have a quick catch-up with GB News' reporter Charlie Peters after yesterday's protest. Charlie.
Hi there, Nana. Well, it's much calmer here today as Erin Galan, the Israeli contestant, has now flown back to Tel Aviv. Calm has returned to Malmö because the Israeli contestant is no longer in town. There were significant protests here all week on the back of her being here and competing in the Eurovision semi-finals and indeed the grand final last night. We saw over 10,000, possibly 12,000 protesters at the semi-final on Thursday, including Greta Thunberg, the environmentalist protester, who, as you've mentioned, has now recently attached herself to the pro-Palestinian protests as well. But last night, the march moving from the centre of the town here just 24 hours ago, this street leading into the main square was absolutely heaving with all sorts of groups. We were live with you at the time, Nana, as many people were trying to shut down the GB News broadcast as groups moved through that location. We did see some extremist flags within that march. One group called the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine was involved. That group is actually banned in the US, Canada, Japan and the European Union. It's a proscribed terrorist organisation, and yet some of its former and serving members were on the march. One member spoke to me and said that he was happy to be there and wasn't concerned about showing the flag on the march. We also heard some rather extreme slogans being distributed and chanted on the march. But the real concern came later on in the evening, at the start of the Eurovision concert, when the final kicked off. We did see some of those protesters that we recognised on that march migrate over to the arena about 15 minutes south of the city where the final was taking place. And that's where the scuffles with the police occurred. Several arrests, pepper spray deployed, and that's when it really kicked off. And it was a sour start to what has been a contentious competition.
Charlie Peters, thank you very much. He's there live in Malmo discussing Eurovision. Well, so let's let's debate. Joining me, Conservative Life peer Lord Daniel Moylan, former Liberal Democrat MP Norman Baker, former aide Stella Chetzekedu.
Almost there,
Chetzekedu. Perfect. And broadcaster and columnist Lizzie Cundy. Welcome. Right, I'm going to start with you, Stella. You saw what happened. Look, these protesters, they're supposedly supposedly protesting for peace, but yet their behaviour is somewhat questionable.
Questionable, but if it's non-violent, then...
It was, though. It was violent, some of it, wasn't it, really?
So there is already enough law to prosecute people who engage in criminal activity. As far as the public is concerned, for most people, they believe that there is a difference between violent criminal activity and non-violent criminal activity. And people should have the right to protest democratically for important causes that have an impact on everyone. Now, what is very interesting with this report is that it was leaked to the press over the weekend. We've been waiting. This report has been in the making for 3 years now. And I'm curious as to why it got leaked during the Eurovision Song Contest and whether people thought that, oh, you know, people are going to be angry and annoyed at protesters right now, so this is a good opportunity for us to gather support for this report. Now, I'm worried about this because what it means is people will be blindsided and they will think, I find the pro-Palestine protesters annoying, so yes, I want them to be banned as if they are a terrorist group, because that's what the recommendation that was leaked to the press is suggesting, which is very short-sighted because you may disagree with this group now, but 2, 3, 5, 10 years down the line, there may be a group that is protesting something that you consider to be important for your rights and for your life.
But these are sort of like, you know, this is going over the top. I mean, it's like almost violent protest. Lizzie Cundy, welcome.
Thank you. Well, yes, I'm all for freedom of speech and the right to protest, but we have to protest with responsibility, and that isn't happening at the moment. Look, I myself got caught up in the Palestine marches. I was terrified. They were singing hate chants. I asked the police for help, and the actual policeman said, look, I'm scared to do anything at the minute because that's going to cause more trouble. This is where we're at, and we've seen what's happened at Eurovision. I'm so sorry to have that poor Israeli contestant have to have 100 police and supervision with her the whole time. She was like imprisoned there at the Eurovision. She couldn't leave her hotel because there was over 20,000 protesters outside her actual hotel, and they were burning flags, you know, singing these awful chants, and it was disturbing. It's dangerous. It's got out of hand, and something needs to be done before someone gets seriously hurt.
But there's this argument about freedom of speech. This is the issue here, Norman, that people are saying freedom of speech, which is almost a licence for them to behave in this manner.
Well, as has been said, there are already a wide range in this country of criminal law which can be used to deal with people who break the law. The present government has enhanced those by, for example, introducing the offence of locking on. So people who are trespassing the law can be arrested and charged, and they are arrested and charged, and that's the correct way of dealing with things. I think it's very dangerous indeed to start bracketing protest groups with terrorist organisations, as has been done on this occasion. There's such a difference between climbing a building and unfurling a flag on the one hand and blowing a building up on the other hand. They are completely different matters of fact, and they should not be linked.
There are different levels of extreme behaviour. One is obviously more damaging than the other, but where do you draw the line? I mean, extreme behaviour is extreme behaviour, and it needs to be dealt with. Daniel?
Well, I think Stella and Norman are deliberately muddying the waters here. The question is not, are there mechanisms for prosecuting people who commit crimes? Because, of course, there are. The question here is, should an organisation that promotes crime as part of its activities, should an organisation that is itself a criminal conspiracy be banned? And the answer to that must surely be yes. And then there is the separate part to the question. Of course, we haven't seen the report. We're going on reports of the report. But if the second part of it appears to be that organisations that cause massive disruption should also be banned. And I actually think that's true, and there's no conflict with the right to protest. You can protest by writing a letter to your Member of Parliament. There's a whole range of things you can do if you want to protest about something. But holding up, ruining and destroying other people's lives who are not involved in it is it's like the secondary picketing we used to have in the trade union movement until Mrs. Thatcher put an end to it. And nobody would want to bring that back.
Well, still, I mean, you heard what Daniel said. You could argue that these organisations are like criminal organisations, just to boil. They're doing criminal damage.
That's precisely the problem. A law like that would allow the government to basically paint a whole group of activists, a whole group of people who care about an issue, out of the actions of a handful of people in that organisation.
They could reform themselves so they didn't actually promote crime. They could be a protest movement that didn't promote crime.
Throughout history, protest, a successful protesting, which has given us a lot of the rights that we enjoy today, has happened through protest that is inconvenient to the wider public. This is the way, and we may not always agree, we may not always like it, but writing to your MPs is fine, but people should have the right, and indeed they do that, and they continue to show...
But Stella, there's a difference between being inconvenient and an actual criminal damage. I mean, Lizzie...
And they will be prosecuted if they have...
but they're not, are they? They're getting...
People who put them up to it should go scot-free.
Let's bring Lizzie Cundy.
We have to realise that these people aren't protesting with responsibility. We saw two elderly ladies with hammers in their handbag trying to destroy the Magna Carta. What world are we living in? How much more dangerous can that be? And just because they're two old ladies, are we supposed to say, oh, no, let's let them get away with it? No, I'm sorry. We have to do something, and do something now. It's getting out of hand.
Norman, final word to you, because it seems like people are just doing stuff because they don't think there are any real consequences. I mean, like these two little old biddies, bless their hearts. Stella said that she thought they were... Stella said she thought they were adorable, Norm.
If this law had been around 100 years ago or thereabouts, we'd have been arresting and banning suffragettes who got for women.
No.
So let's be very clear about this. We believe in this country in freedom of assembly and freedom of speech. This channel believes in freedom of assembly and freedom of speech, and yet this report, if the leak is correct, would say a group's actions were persistent and used to promote a political or ideological cause, that would count against them. That could count with political parties.
Listen, freedom of speech doesn't mean you can say or do whatever you like. Because
there's already laws on controlling that.
It means that within a democracy, that freedom is limited by the agreement of the democracy, and we'll tell you where the line is. And if you continuously cross it, which I think many of these protests do, then you absolutely should be prosecuted, and there should be a law against it. That's my view. But what do you think? I'm going to quickly, yes or no from you, Daniel. What do you think? Our question is it time to make tighter laws against freedom of speech? Daniel?
I don't regard this as a freedom of speech issue, but I do think that these demonstrations need to be brought within bounds.
Is it time to ban extreme protests then, yes or no, Daniel?
I'm with what I've read of the report so far, yeah.
Yeah. Norman Baker, same to you. No? Stella?
Over my dead body.
We may have to kill you. And also, Lizzie Cundy.
Most definitely, yes.
Right, thank you so much for your thoughts, Lizzie Cundy. Stella Chaddeq. I was almost there. Also Norman Baker and also Lord Daniel Moylan. Thank you so much for your thoughts. Well, what do you think at home? gbnews.com/your say. I'll get to read some of those in a matter of moments. Coming up, we'll continue with the Great British Debate this hour. I'm asking, is it time to ban extreme protests? My panel will be back to discuss. Still to come, today's outside guest. We'll talk highs, lows and lessons learned. What comes next on the outside? Then an American-born singer. These are your clues. She's an American-born singer. Her parents are responsible for creating several cult TV series, including Captain Scarlet. Remember that puppet like Captain Scarlet? First, let's get your latest news headlines with Aaron Armstrong.
It's 4:33. I'm Aaron Armstrong in the GB newsroom. Claims a British-Israeli hostage has died in Gaza are being urgently investigated by the Foreign Office. Hamas says Nadav Popplewell, who was kidnapped during the October attack in Israel, was injured during an airstrike last month. Undated footage of the 51-year-old with a black eye was also released. Well, the government says it's seeking more information after the terrorist group made a claim in a video. A third man's been arrested on suspicion of murder following a house fire in Wolverhampton. Emergency services were called to a property in the Dunstall Hill area at 2 a.m. yesterday, where two women, both in their 20s, pronounced dead at the scene. Police have been granted extra time to question two other men, aged 19 and 22. It's thought they were known to the victims. Tory defector Natalie Elphicke denies that she lobbied the Justice Secretary over her then-husband's sex offences trial. Sir Robert Buckland claims the MP, who crossed the floor to Labour, requested the case be moved to a lower-profile court. Speaking to the Sunday Times, he says she was told the request was completely inappropriate. Her spokesperson has refuted the allegations and has described it as nonsense. And weather warnings for thunderstorms are in place across the country. Britain's warm weather is set to end this afternoon. The Met Office has issued a new alert for rain in southwest England. Eastern areas of Northern Ireland can also expect a lot of rain, and there's a warning in place there until 6 a.m. on Tuesday. So make the most of the sunshine while you have it. That's the news, or also you can get more if you scan our QR codes. Also details on the website. Now back to Nana.
Thank you, Aaron. Right, well, there's still plenty of time to win our biggest cash prize so far, a whopping £20,000. Imagine having that in your bank account this summer. But you've got to be in the draw for your chance to win, so here's how.
Don't miss your chance to win our biggest cash prize so far. A totally terrific £20,000 in tax-free cash to make your summer spectacular. You could use that cash to splash out on a holiday, make the garden glam, buy a new car, or just save it for a rainy day. Whatever you'd spend £20,000 on, make sure you don't miss the chance to make it yours. For another chance to win £20,000 in tax-free cash, text WIN to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB05 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 31st of May. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Good luck indeed. You're with me, Nana Akua. GB News, we're live on TV, online and on digital radio. 36 minutes after 4 o'clock. Coming up, Worldview will cross live to Los Angeles to get the latest from Paul Dudridge. But next, it's time for the Great British Debate this hour. And I'm asking, is it time to ban extreme protests? I've got a poll up right now on X asking you that very question. Is it time to ban extreme protests?
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQs live here on GB News.
Whenever Parliament is in session on a Wednesday at midday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions. We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQs live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
So Meghan's launched her new lifestyle range, starting with jams. It's called American Riviera Orchard. Apparently, it's been made from organic fruits grown in Meghan and Harry's Montecito gardens. If we can believe it, I reserve an air of scepticism. But she sent out 50 jars of this jam to influencers and celebrity friends in the hope of trying to boost some sales to her products. But it's ended up winning for King Charles because fans have gone to Highgrove website and King Charles's jam has sold out.
So hang on, why did they go?
Has gone through the roof.
Why did they go to the Highgrove website?
Well, I think it's a bit of a blow against Meghan because they're saying we don't want your jam. We're going to go and get the king. So it just shows how popular the king is. This is what she's always wanted. Her dream has been to be like this Gwyneth Paltrow style lifestyle guru. She's always loved Gwyneth's website Goop. When she set up the TIG, which was her website when she was still in Suits as a working actress, that was the brand, the style of brand that she was going for, was this Gwyneth style, New York elite, very princessy. So this is her chance now by trying to cash in on her royal title because she is now a duchess, so she's using that to try and elevate her brand. And she's really now trying to carve out herself as this new Martha Stewart.
And she's coming out with a cooking show as well on Netflix. She's coming out with a cooking show. And
I mean, to be fair to Meghan, she has always tried to say that she's into healthy eating, organic food, cooking. But I don't see this being a success. It just will not happen for her because she's just burnt too many bridges. People just don't believe in her brand. They don't think she's authentic. So, are you an actress? Are you a guru? Are you a duchess? Are you a philanthropist?
Who are you, Meghan?
Who actually are you? This is what we're asking. I don't think anyone knows. I don't think Meghan really knows who she is.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threats on.
Our job is to do what's in the best interest of our country.
You made my argument for me.
My guest and I tackle the issues that really matter with a sharp take on every story.
I'm hearing it up and down the country. That was a beginning, not an end.
Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon. It's 39 minutes after 4 o'clock. This is GB News. We are the People's Channel. I'm Nana Akua. Right, it's time now for the Great British Debate this hour. And I'm asking, is it time to ban extreme protests? So-called extreme protest groups like Just Stop Oil, Palestine Action may well soon be under proposals which have been put forward by the government's advisor to be banned due to political violence. Lord Wolney's upcoming report defines such groups as those which routinely use criminal tactics to try to achieve their aims and condemns them for using such measures, create mayhem and hold the public and workers to ransom without fear of consequence. So what do you think? Are your thoughts? Just Stop Oil, should they be condemned for these sort of protests? Is this the right thing to do? Let's see what your thoughts are. So joining me now for the Great British Debate, I'm asking, is it time to ban extreme protests? Let's see what my panel make of that. I'm joined by author and broadcaster Christine Hamilton, also broadcaster and journalist Danny Kelly. Danny Kelly.
I think it is. I think if there's any criminal activity, then, you know, the answer's there in front of our eyes. You know, if they're breaking the law, then the old bill has got to start lifting and plod's got to go in. I've just seen on the television, for the benefit of those listening on the radio, you saw all of the Just Stop Oil divs sitting down, grinding London to a complete standstill. You know, they're preaching to the converted. The majority of people would say, yes, OK, we understand and we empathise with what you're trying to achieve, but please, let me get to work. You know, there's an ambulance back there, and I know you've got a blue light policy, but that blue light policy is completely irrelevant because before that ambulance can get here, there's 600 cars blocking your way.
Christine Hamilton.
Well, enough is enough. Everybody goes on about the freedom to protest, etc., and people's rights. Of course, we all accept that. We're British, for heaven's sake. Of course, in this country, basically, the freedom to protest is absolute unless people take it to extreme. And we've had this... They're a mob, frankly, week after week after week for months, and enough is enough. So there is time. For example, take one small example, which I understand is in Lord Wolney, I think his name is. He's an ex-Labour MP. One thing in his report is that face masks should be banned. because people are not allowing their identity to be seen because they've got face masks on, so the police don't know who they are, so they can't prosecute people for clear criminal behaviour. Now, that is a small thing. That ought to be done. My fear is that, A, the civil service will water it down, and B, Labour won't implement it when the time comes because they'll be the government. But yes, of course it's time.
We've got James has been in touch with his thoughts. He says very few Hamas terrorist supporters were out marching yesterday, which is amazing, because it was a hot, scorching weekend. I think he's talking about here in the UK, not out there. Trump, obviously, they are not Hamas supporting. Lots of them would argue they're they're fighting for peace. Let's see, Trump's any marching for those poor, persecuted Palestinian people. We can see right through their pathetic virtue signalling. Does come across as virtue signalling, a lot of that. I mean, especially the stuff in Eurovision.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned the masks and the inquiry by Lord, what's his name again?
Walney.
Walney
Lord
mentions
John
the masks.
John Woodcock, his name is.
So pertinent, because why are you covering your face?
What are you afraid of?
Either you don't want to be embarrassed and humiliated when the Daily Mail take a photo of it, or you don't want to have your door kicked in at 4 in the morning by the Met Police when they identify you. There's no reason to wear COVID masks nowadays. Do you know, when I see someone driving a car with a COVID mask, walking down the street...
that's hilarious.
What the hell are you doing?
Yeah. I know.
I remember once seeing someone with a COVID mask driving in the convertible car on the motorway. That's hilarious. On the motorway with the hood down.
Occasionally, I would give, forgive me, any older person, little old lady who's got a mask on. I would think maybe she's frail, maybe she's vulnerable, trotting around the supermarket, wants to keep the mask on. But basically, I agree with you, it's utterly ridiculous.
Well, if it makes someone feel better, then fair enough. Although, to be fair, although it may not have, the particles for COVID were too small to be protected with a mask, actually, some other ailments you were protected from, I suppose. So there was something good. But listen, this shows nothing about you and your views. Yes, you are. You are indeed. Let's welcome one of our great British voices. This is your opportunity to be on the show and tell us what you really think about the topics we're discussing. Where should we go?
The home of carpets.
Why not? Kidderminster carpets. John Reid. John Reid, is it time to ban extreme protest? What do you think, John?
Yeah, I think a lot about it, Nana. First of all, I'm broadly in agreement with what both of your guests are saying today. I think they're somewhere near right. However, I would say that it depends on the word extreme, doesn't it? If the government are allowing situations to be qualified, or in the eyes of the protesters, as extreme, who's going to do something about it? You know, who do you think would try and stop the protests when the prisoners revolted a few years back and got up on the roof of the prison and spent a few days up on Strangeways in Manchester and others? You know, it's all very well saying to ban these things, but we are a free country. We have got free speech. And it comes down to who's going to implement the ban. So, yeah, I'm broadly in agreement. I think you've got to draw the line somewhere. But where the line is drawn and where it's investigated, where people are forced to do something about it, I think that's debatable, personally.
Thank you very much, John Reid. Interesting views as well. Thank you so much. That's John Reid in Kidderminster. Right, well, if you just joined me, welcome. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. Coming up in the next hour, my great British debate, I'm asking Natalie Elphicke, a Labour asset or liability? But next, Worldview will cross line to Los Angeles to speak to the host of the Politics People podcast, Paul Dudridge. We'll get the latest on Donald Trump's legal woes as the former president is threatened with prison for violating a gagging order for the 10th time. Do not go anywhere.
Hello, welcome to your GB News weather update brought to you by the Met Office. For the outlook, drier in the east but turning unsettled in the west and also feeling cooler as we go into Monday. So high pressure is going to be moving its way eastwards. We do have some weather fronts that's bringing a focus for some showers or longer spells of rain through the rest of today. And we do have some warnings in force as well for thunderstorms. Thunderstorms are going to be pushing their way northwards, affecting northern England and also into Scotland. Some of these are going to be quite heavy at times, giving hail and thunder. Elsewhere, turning drier, some low cloud across western parts, clearest in the east, but temperatures still ranging around 10 or 11 degrees. So it is going to be a mild start as we start Monday, but a bit of an east-west split in the weather. Once that low cloud generally clears across much of England and Wales, it will turn drier and brighter. Showers coming into Scotland, but further west we have an area of low pressure bringing outbreaks of rain across Northern Ireland, western parts of England and also into South Wales too. So it is going to be feeling cooler for all, highs of up to maybe 20 or 22 degrees. As we go through Tuesday, that rain shifts its focus further towards the north and east with showers following, and then that really sets the scene for the outlook as well. So longer spells of rain on Tuesday, Wednesday and Thursday, sunny spells, scattered showers, not as warm but still highs of 20 or 21 degrees.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall? Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
We're GB News, and we come from a proud tradition of British journalism.
That's why I'm so excited to be here. It's something so new.
The first news channel to be launched in Britain in over 30 years.
Launched to represent the views of the British people.
To go where other broadcasters refuse to go.
How did you find out about the story in the first place?
Launched with one aim.
To be the fearless champion of Britain.
It's an absolutely fantastic atmosphere here.
This is GB News.
The People's Channel. GB News, Britain's news channel.
So 49 minutes after 4 o'clock. Welcome. This is GB News. We are the People's Channel. I'm Nana Akua. Well, it's been another week, a big week in the US. And who better to talk to us? Well, it's time for Worldview now. The host of the Politics People podcast, Paul Duddridge, joins us. Oh, here we go, here we go. Right, so, Paul, Donald Trump found in contempt for violating a gag order for the 10th time. So this isn't the £9,000 or $9,000 that he paid before. This is another time now. Some people are claiming that he actually wants to go to jail now.
Yeah, so since we spoke last week, and it's deja vu all over again. So last week I told you he was done for 9th time, and that he got a $9,000 fine for that. Now, just after we spoke, he got done for the 10th time for breaking this gag order. Now, there is a school of thought, and it's honestly, I think it's got some credibility that he's trying to go to jail. He wants to be jailed because the judge keeps threatening it. And if you think about when he did his mugshot in Georgia, it broke the internet. He's always got an eye to this. He wants to go full Mandela, basically. He wants to actually now be jailed because he calls this election interference. It would definitely show up all these proceedings as potentially election interference. And so he is now talking about it. This is the thing. This isn't just my speculation, which is getting me into trouble all the time. You know, he said this week in one of his speeches, it's just like, well, look, if I have to go to jail to protect my First Amendment rights, then so be it. I'm paraphrasing. But that's where he's at. And I don't think it's the worst strategy I've ever heard. His supporters would just go through the roof. It would be hilarious. So, yes, we think that Trump could very possibly be trying to get himself jailed for contempt. It'll only be for 24 hours. And they're talking about if it happened, he might have to go to Rikers, which is hilarious. It's a notorious New York prison.
Well, you see, but what about if he does go to jail? Could he conduct his election campaign from there? Because aren't the elections in November? So he could be in jail for... How long would he go to jail for?
Let's just say he was put in jail. And let's say he was in jail till... February next year. Not only could he conduct his campaign from there, he would still legally be able to take on the office of president. The Constitution's a wonderful thing. He could actually be in a prison cell with the Secret Service nearby and be the president. So his campaign, can he conduct it from a jail cell? He's currently conducting it from a New York courtroom. He did a rally in New Jersey on Saturday night. Now, New Jersey is supposed to be a Democrat state. It's supposed to be deep blue. He had... The reports are minimum 80,000 people there. They're talking about it as the biggest political rally in New Jersey history. He did this on Saturday night. Obviously, the Republicans claim it's 80,000 people and above. The Democrats say there was about 11 people there. But he's campaigning so successfully from the courtroom that he's now just doing stuff on his doorstep. He pops over to New Jersey, gets a crowd of 80,000. I think it's more like 100,000. And he's also now you know my fears about him being behind in all the battleground states, the sort of 6 decided that this week, the polls show he's ahead in every single one of them. Wow. So look, it's typical Trumpism. He's finding that all the impediments they throw at him, all the interference as he sees it being thrown at him, it's actually improving his campaign. So yes, not only could he campaign, he could technically be president from a jail cell.
So after this thing, because this is the Stormy Daniels one, right? After this, is that the end of the legal shenanigans, or are there more cases that have been brought against him that he needs to fight?
This is the great thing. So this week, it's been a great week. This week, okay, he's got the Georgia case, the Fani Willis Georgia case, and the court in Georgia has agreed to hear his appeal to have Fani Willis removed from the case, that she shouldn't be allowed to prosecute him. Okay, that means that it was supposed to start, I believe, on May 20th. I think it was May 20th. It's over. That thing's over. Nothing's going to happen now in Georgia until after the election. Then you've got the documents case. I could have got the dates mixed up. Then you've got the documents case. He's supposed to have had these secret stolen documents in Florida. This is being prosecuted at the federal level. That has now been absolutely vacated indefinitely. The judge is saying it's vacated indefinitely, basically delayed, because there's so many other considerations and factors. So we're not going to see him prosecuted in court, tried in court for those 2 cases. So they're gone. Stormy, even if he's found guilty of Stormy, he will immediately lodge an appeal. As far as the campaign is concerned, this week ended all the legal impediments to his campaign, because even if he's found guilty with Stormy, he will immediately appeal. That will kick it into the long grass. So this week he has cleared up all the legal problems that he's been experiencing. The establishment's going to keep throwing stuff at him, but he sort of doesn't care, and it's working to his benefit now. So it's been a great week for him legally. He has to go through how long? Another 4 or 5 weeks of the Stormy Daniels thing. Then he's off the leash. Then he's free.
Wow, off the leash. Then he's free. Donald Trump unleashed. Paul Dudridge, thank you so much. Always a pleasure. Host of the Politics People podcast. This is GB News on TV, online and digital radio. I'll be joined by my outside guest very, very shortly. An American-born singer, but who is she? Stay tuned to find out after 5.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, welcome to your GB News weather update, brought to you by the Met Office. For the outlook, drier in the east but turning unsettled in the west, and also feeling cooler as we go into Monday. So high pressure is going to be moving its way eastwards. We do have some weather fronts that's bringing a focus for some showers or longer spells of rain through the rest of today. And we do have some warnings in force as well for thunderstorm. Thunderstorms are going to be pushing their way northwards, affecting northern England and also into Scotland. Some of these are going to be quite heavy at times, giving hail and thunder. Elsewhere, turning drier, some low cloud across western parts, clearest in the east, but temperatures still ranging around 10 or 11 degrees. So it is going to be a mild start as we start Monday, but a bit of an east-west split in the weather. Once that low cloud generally clears across much of England and Wales, it will turn drier and brighter. Showers coming into Scotland, but further west we have an area of low pressure bringing outbreaks of rain across Northern Ireland, western parts of England and also into South Wales too. So it is going to be feeling cooler for all, highs of up to maybe 20 or 22 degrees. As we go through Tuesday, that rain shifts its focus further towards the north and east with showers following, and then that really sets the scene for the outlook as well. So longer spells of rain on Tuesday, Wednesday and Thursday, sunny spells, scattered showers, not as warm but still highs of 20 or 21 degrees.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Don't miss your chance to win our biggest cash prize so far. A totally terrific £20,000 in tax-free cash to make your summer spectacular. You could use that cash to splash out on a holiday, make the garden glam, buy a new car, or just save it for a rainy day. Whatever you'd spend £20,000 on, make sure you don't miss the chance to make it yours. For another chance to win £20,000 in tax-free cash, text prize to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB05 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 31st of May. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio, and online.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Patrick Christys. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threat and so on.
Our job is to do what's in the best interest of our country.
You made my argument for me.
My guests and I tackle the issues that really matter, with a sharp take on every story.
I'm hearing it up and down the country.
That was a beginning, not an end.
Patrick Christys tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's live here on GB News.
Whenever Parliament is in session on a Wednesday at midday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions. We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
I'm Simon Evans, and this is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. And for the next hour, me and my panel will be taking on some of the big topics hitting the headlines right now. Coming up, my outside guest is a singer and actress, as well as being the daughter of the creators of Thunderbirds. You remember? Can you guess who she is yet? Then for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking Natalie Elphicke, a Labour asset or liability? And what's happening in this clip? Lady running, well, what's she going to do? Find out in clip bait. But first, let's get your latest news with Aaron Armstrong.
Very good evening to you. It is 5 o'clock. I'm Aaron Armstrong. The UK says it would support a two-state solution in the Middle East when the time is right. Comments from the Deputy Foreign Secretary come as Israel has launched fresh strikes in northern Gaza, the military operation to prevent Hamas from regrouping. It's warned civilians there and also in Rafah in the south to relocate. Earlier, the terrorist group posted a video claiming a British-Israeli hostage, Nadav Popplewell, has died after being injured in an airstrike last month. The government says it's urgently seeking more information. Let's hear from Andrew Mitchell then, the Deputy Foreign Secretary.
It is right to recognise Palestine as a state at the United Nations at the right time. And that doesn't have to be at the end of the process for peace. It could be as part of those negotiations. And Britain will support Palestine becoming a state at the UN when we feel the time is right. That isn't now, but it may, as I say, be before the end of the peace process.
Tory defector Natalie Elphicke denies she lobbied the Justice Secretary over her then-husband's sex offences trial. Sir Robert Buckland claims the MP, who crossed the floor to Labour, requested the case be moved to a lower-profile court. Speaking to the Sunday Times, he says she was told the request was completely inappropriate. Her spokesperson has refuted the accusation, describing it as nonsense. Ms Elphicke ended the marriage when her husband was convicted of sexually assaulting 2 women and jailed for 2 years. At least 7 people have been killed and 17 injured, including 2 children, after an apartment block collapsed in Russia. State media says fragments of a Ukrainian missile, which were downed by Russia's air defence system, landed on the building in the city of Belgorod. Rescue efforts were hampered when the roof also collapsed, with rubble covering emergency crews. They have now resumed their work in a bid to find more survivors. A third man's been arrested on suspicion of murder following a house fire in Wolverhampton. Emergency services were called to a property in the Dunstall Hill area at 2 a.m. yesterday, where 2 women, both in their 20s, were pronounced dead at the scene. 4 people were also injured. Police have been granted extra time to question 2 men arrested yesterday, aged 19 and 22. It's thought they were known to the women. Applications have opened for funded childcare, an expansion on the government's current offer for working families. Parents of children who are older than 9 months from September are now eligible for support. Parents of 2-year-olds have been able to access 15 hours of funded childcare since last month. Well, the full rollout will see support increase to 30 hours a week by September next year. Labour's rejected a report claiming its fair pay agreements in social care could cost taxpayers £4.2 billion a year. The party says it wants to empower adult social care professionals and the trade unions that represent them so they can negotiate better deals. The Policy Exchange think tank says the total cost of the proposed wage rise in 2023 to 24 would have been at least £9.9 billion per year. Labour says the claims are based on fiction and don't reflect party policy. And weather warnings for thunderstorms are now in place across the country, with Britain's warm spell ending this afternoon. Temperatures are still expected to reach around 27 degrees any time around now in central parts of the country, but the wet weather is coming. The Met Office has issued fresh alerts for rain in south-west England, with heavy downpours expected in some areas of Northern Ireland. A warning is in place there until 6 a.m. on Tuesday. And 2 skydivers have become the first to navigate their way through Tower Bridge wearing wingsuits. Well, the pair from Austria jumped from a helicopter and flew across the River Thames, reaching a top speed of 152 miles per hour before successfully winging their way between the 2 bridge towers. It followed extensive training in Oxfordshire, which involved the use of cranes to simulate the structure.
Feeling good. I'm feeling really good. It was quite intense, I would say, but yeah, we were well prepared and I'm pretty happy now.
Incredible stuff. Right, sign up to GB News Alerts if you want more on all of our stories. The code is on your screen, or the details are on gbnews.com/alerts. Now it's back to Nana.
Thank you, Aaron. It's fast approaching 6 minutes after 5 o'clock. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. For the next hour, me and my panel will be taking on some of the big topics hitting the headlines right now. This show is all about opinion. It's mine, it's theirs, and of course it's yours. We'll be debating, discussing, and at times we will disagree, but no one will be cancelled. So joining me today, it's broadcaster and journalist Danny Kelly, also broadcaster and author Christine Hamilton. Still to come, each Sunday at 5, I'm joined by a celebrity, a former MP, or someone who's had an extremely interesting life. To take a look at life after the job, we talk highs, lows and lessons learned, and what comes next on the outside. And today, my guest is a singer, an actress, as well as being the daughter of the creators of Thunderbirds. She's had a critical acclaimed UK hit. But who do you think she could be? Then, for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking Natalie Elphicke, a Labour asset or liability? The newly defected Labour MP for Dover might prove to be more trouble than she's worth for Keir Starmer's Labour Party. His own backbenchers seem to think so. For the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, what do you think? Natalie, Elphicke, a Labour asset or liability? As ever, get in touch in the usual way. gbnews.com/your say, or tweet me at GBNews. So every Sunday, just after 5, I'm joined by a celebrity, a former MP, or someone who's had an extremely interesting career, to take a look at life after the job. We talk highs, lows, lessons learned, and what comes next on the outside. And this week, my guest was born in Mississippi. How many S's, how many P's? In America. Coming to London as a child now, she's the daughter of the famous husband and wife team who created the cult television series The Thunderbirds, Stingray and Captain Scarlet. Now, she appeared in numerous television and theatre productions across the UK and worked alongside legendary actors and performers. And she's returned to singing with her highly acclaimed album, Love in a Dark Place, being widely and favourably reviewed in the national press and played on radio stations throughout the country. So who is she? Well, did you get it? I'm joined by singer and actress Dee Anderson. Dee, welcome. We didn't give them any visual clues. I mean, there's just a face with hair and then a blurred out thing. But there were a lot of audio clues. And I've got to say, Dee, wow, what an interesting life you've had.
Oh, thank you.
So talk to me. You were born in America.
Yep, in Mississippi.
You were young when you came to this country.
Yes,
how old were you?
I was about 5.
About 5.
I was actually, I remember it vaguely, but I have been back. But I'm settled. I'm a London girl, really. Yeah. So I'm settled here. But I do like going back there, and I love going to Memphis because it's full of amazing memories, and the music is fantastic.
Of course.
And I love that. The influences of music in Memphis is brilliant.
I can imagine as well.
Yeah.
And your parents now, they weren't just like, I mean, average parents, were they? They were creators of this. So what was it like as a child growing up? Did you get involved in much of the things they were doing?
Well, it's weird because I think because, you know, your parents, you're always embarrassed about your parents, aren't you, as you're growing up? And so I sort of didn't really talk about them to my friends at school, but suddenly it became very cool, and they were everywhere. And suddenly, especially with Thunderbirds, it was a real phenomenon, and I just so enjoyed the whole sort of experience of meeting people. We met a lot of celebrities, actually.
Who was the most famous person that you met, or the one that you were most starstruck by? Because even though your parents were very kind of famous in their own way for what they were doing, and you were probably getting more famous, I'm sure you were doing stuff.
Yeah, I was, yeah.
So, but who is the person that's left you starstruck? For me, it's Andrew Pearce. I love working with him.
Yes,
he's so good. I'm like, he's a legend. I can't believe I'm working with him. But
actually, Shirley Bassey.
Really?
Yeah. She came to our house for tea, and she was so amazing, so charismatic. And I remember her, as a kid, putting her hand up like that, you know, when she used to do all the amazing actions. And
she still does them.
She still does them. And I always thought, oh, wow, I want to be a singer. And actually, I think maybe that was why I pursued that sort of the music scene, really.
Now, Thunderbirds, I can remember it when I was very young.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, God, not this again. Because on a Sunday, it would come on, and then it would literally felt like it would take her over the entire afternoon. Everyone was watching it. I mean, I don't know. I personally didn't really like it, because I was like, it was on for so long.
I know.
Your parents literally took over.
They did. They totally took over, and I had to watch it, of course.
Of course.
So that was a bit of a downer for me. But I kind of loved Lady Penelope.
Oh, yeah.
And my mum told me that, well, it was based on my mother's looks. I mean, she looked exactly like Lady Penelope.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And apparently my eyes, so...
Oh, really? So Lady Penelope's got your eyes?
Yes, she has.
Where are those puppets now? Because I know they must be worth a fortune. Do you have any of them? Did your parents?
I've got a Lady Penelope.
You've got Lady Penelope?
Yeah, I have. But
oh, wow.
There's another one with Mary Turner, who is still alive at 90, and she's amazing, and she sculpted it under my mother's creative eye, and they're magical, the puppets. You know, the originals are magical. And I have to say, I mean, my parents didn't realise that they were going to last so long. They just thought it was going to be a puppet series, but it's like, you know, a national sort of, treasure, isn't it?
It's like a cult, isn't it, really?
Yeah,
it was a big series at the time, and there were people who were just so into it. It was quite incredible.
It really is.
Being part of the creation of that. So what were you doing during this time, and how has your career progressed?
Well, actually, I mean, I was growing up with Thunderbirds, and I really did, want to go into sort of acting and singing. I think singing is my first love. Music has always been my first love. My grandparents I spend a lot of time with because, of course, my parents were always working. And so we were always around the piano, singing songs, and they were always putting me in for competitions as I was growing up, which I used to win.
Of course you would, absolutely.
Apart from one year when actually I didn't win, I came second.
I bet you're angry with that.
I was very
I'd be furious.
Yes, absolutely.
Now, you've done quite a lot of things.
Yeah.
You've recently returned to singing.
Yes.
And you've been doing, with an album, Love in a Dark Place.
Yeah.
What is that about?
Well, Love in a Dark Place was something that was a sort of personal kind of journey for me. And so I wanted it to be very sort of eclectic and wanted to have a combination of... They said I won an award for the best jazz artist, but I didn't want to just sing jazz. I wanted to sing, different sort of genres of music. And so that was very well received. I'm now actually planning a very big tour, combining my legacy with music, which is probably going to launch around about September, October. And I'm also producing a film. I've got Tony McHale, who is a fabulous screenwriter, who's doing the screenplay for my mother's life. So a lot is happening towards the end of the year. Of course, as you said before, Nana, Wonderbirds is our celebrity chat show.
Yes.
So we talk to a lot of celebrities on that.
Yeah, now talk to me a bit more about that, because people may not know it, but this was something that you set up during the pandemic.
Yeah, the pandemic.
Well, why did you set it up? How was the pandemic for you?
It was actually Debbie Arnold's idea. She's a very close friend of mine, and she's fantastic. And so she and I got together, Sherry Hewson and Harriet Thorpe. Harriet's now in EastEnders, and Sherry, of course, is a very big star. The four of us started it off on the eve of lockdown. We've had millions of viewers on YouTube, and now we've got it onto a Sky channel. And we interview big celebrities and inspirational people. But also, it's very good because it's a platform for people who want to talk about stuff. So, mental health issues, female sort of, and diversity. We're not political, but we talk about stuff that people actually want to air. And we're now just about to launch a beauty show on the same platform. So we've had millions of people, and we're now going on to Sky.
That's quite incredible, isn't it, that this has come from an idea.
Yeah.
But then your parents' daughter, which is no surprise, you should be doing that sort of thing.
Yeah, exactly.
What was the pandemic like for you? Because a lot of people really struggled. I mean, I enjoyed parts of it. The first few lockdowns, I thought, oh, this is great.
Yeah.
I still had to work, but
Yes,
it just
of
felt
course.
like everything was calmer and the stress was gone. And
Yeah.
But then towards the end, it's like, what, again?
I know.
Why? There's a vaccine.
Second time round was hard, wasn't it?
Second time around was hard-ish, but when they tried, I was like, well, you've got a vaccine. What's the point if you? What's the point if you've got the vaccine? It's supposed to work, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we launched it on the eve of lockdown, and we did like 4 shows a week at that time. Richard Arnold, bless him, did a lot of shows with us. We had very big celebrities actually wanting to come and join us, like Gok Kwan and, loads of amazing... Paul O'Grady, bless him, before he died, but fantastic, fantastic people. Susie Quattro is a regular. And because we talked about stuff that nobody else really wanted to talk about, people were really... Well, they actually said it changed their lives.
Yeah.
Or really helped them through the pandemic. So we felt we'd done something really good, very, positive.
Yeah, and of course it's still going. It'll be on a Sky
Still going,
platform
yeah.
very soon. Well, it's on a Sky platform now, and your other thing is going on a Sky platform as well. Now, the show also features guest celebrities from the world of TV and film, from the girls' Little Black Book of Contacts. So what does that mean? These are all your big contacts you're getting on this show?
Well, a lot of people we know already. Between us, we know sort of most people in the industry, and so we phone them and say, "Would you like to come on and talk about stuff?" And they always say yes. But there are people now who are coming to us wanting to be on because they know that we're not going to expose them, we're not going to do anything detrimental. It's a very positive vibe.
It's not gotcha TV like some of them. They just want to get you on there and go, gotcha.
Exactly.
You didn't answer that question. We're going to get you.
Yeah.
So if people want to find out more about you and, of course, all the stuff you're doing, do you have a website?
I do. danderson.co.uk and amazingwonderbirds.com. And you can see all the shows on there and watch this space for the tour, which is very exciting.
I'd love it if you could spell out a little tune now.
OK.
Go on, what have you got?
Oh, do you want me to?
Yeah, go on, what you got?
OK. I wish I was a spaceman, the only girl alive, and then I'm gonna take you 5XL5. Something like that.
Very good. Way better than our entrance for Eurovision. Did you watch that?
Oh, my goodness, no. Sorry, I didn't watch it deliberately.
Well. Yeah, just as well. Terrible, terrible.
No.
You could have done it. Why didn't they get someone like you to do it?
Well, actually, next year.
I think you should go for that next year.
Thank you, Nana. I will quote you.
Dee, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you.
That is the fabulous Dee Anderson. Did you guess? Yes. She was my outside guest. If you just tuned in, it's just coming up to 18 minutes after 5 o'clock. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. Next, it's time for the Great British Debate this hour. And I'm asking Natalie Elphicke, a Labour asset or a liability? This is GB News.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the quaint Derbyshire village of Sudbury, there's a storm brewing between the local football club and the National Trust. This grass field might seem unremarkable, but for hundreds of years it's been part of the Sudbury Hall estate, playing host to the village football and cricket matches. Now the National Trust are planning to put an end to that tradition in the name of biodiversity, with plans for trees and plants where the football club play. Some worry it breaks a memorandum of wishes from the late Lord Vernon, whose family have lived here since 1660. Manager of Sudbury FC Tom Crutchley says he's upset at the decision.
Naturally disappointed. We've been here, this is our 9th year. We've put a lot of effort into here to keep playing, to maintain it. I'm from the village originally, so personally it was, it is very upsetting.
MP for Derbyshire Dale Sarah Dines says the National Trust aren't respecting the history of the site.
I feel they're trampling over the wishes of historic owners who gave up this wonderful site for the nation. And for over 100 years, people have played football and cricket here. It's incredibly sad. Incredibly sad. And it's against the wishes of a lot of people locally who've written to me from the village.
Sudbury Hall lives under the branding of the Children's Country House, a decision which Dines says is disrespectful to the history of the estate.
I mean, this is fake to make it into a children's theme park. It's almost a reimagining, and in fact, that's the very words it says on their website. The house is reopened, it's been reimagined. I don't want our heritage to be reimagined. I think the National Trust has been captured by people who have different ideas than most people in this country.
Whilst the public will still be able to roam these historic grounds, the village feels like a legacy is being snatched away. Jack Carson, GB News, Sudbury.
We're GB News, and we come from a proud tradition of British journalism.
That's why I'm so excited to be here. It's something so new. The first news channel to be launched in Britain in over 30 years.
Launched to represent the views of the British people.
To go where other broadcasters refuse to go. How did you find out about the story in the first place?
Launched with one aim.
To be the fearless champion of Britain.
It's an absolutely fantastic atmosphere here.
This is GB News.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. It's coming up to 22 minutes after 5 o'clock. I'm Nana Akua. Don't forget as well, you can stream the show live on YouTube, or why not download the GB News app. It's completely free and you can check out all the programmes that we have on the channel. But it's time for the Great British Debate this hour, and I'm asking Natalie Elphicke, a Labour asset or liability? Newly defected, Natalie Elphicke is facing scrutiny after it emerged that she may have lobbied the Justice Secretary over her ex-husband's sex offences. Sir Robert Buckland claims the MP who crossed the floor to Labour requested the case be moved to a lower-profile court, and our spokesperson refuted the accusation, describing it as nonsense in the Daily Mail. Now, this week has seen numerous controversies over the MP's defection, with many seeing her as too right-wing to be welcomed by Labour's Sir Keir Starmer. So, for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking Natalie Elphicke, a Labour asset or liability? Well, joining me is the former Labour MP Stephen Pound and also Neil Hamilton, former UKIP leader. Right, I'm going to start with you, Stephen Pound. Natalie Elphicke, it's great. Yeah. You've got another defected Tory MP, isn't it?
Yeah, well, it's a bit weird, isn't it? I can think of one Labour MP, Reg Prentice, who joined the Tories. I can think of about a dozen Tory MPs who joined Labour. But look, can I just say one thing about Robert Buckland? I think he's made himself look a bit stupid here. If he had concerns at the time, why didn't he raise them at the time? I think it looks pretty poor politics to suddenly raise it now. But in the short term, I have to say, clearly, Natalie Elphicke is an asset because it sends out a message that, Labour is the broad church and not just a broad church full of knaves, as somebody once said. But in the long term, I think it could be a liability. She's further to the right than the soup spoon. We all know that. And I just, I've absolutely no idea why she did it, because there's no indication whatsoever in all her insults at Sir Keir Starmer and her comments about asylum seekers that she showed the remotest interest in coming to join us in the Labour Party. But, time will tell. But at the moment, it's an asset because it sends out a pretty powerful signal to those people who wouldn't normally be thinking of voting Labour.
Do you think? I think it sends a pretty powerful signal. They both appear to be smiling at each other with gritted teeth. Neil Hamilton, former UKIP leader. What is she? Is she an asset or a liability for Keir Starmer's party?
Well, the Labour Party is very keen on net zero. I think she's the human equivalent of net zero, isn't she? So I don't think she's going to make the slightest difference either way. It's true that the Conservative Party describes itself as a broad church. Labour's more like a broad mosque, I suppose. I don't see that she will fit into the kind of mindset of the modern Labour Party, any shape or form. But it's all irrelevant anyway, because she isn't going to be contesting the next election, and Parliament has probably got about 12 sitting weeks left to go if there's a general election in the autumn. So I think this is a 5-minute wonder, and there isn't much of a wonder in it at all. We're just wondering why on earth has she done it, which has got nothing in common with the party she's now joined.
But what can she possibly get out of this, Stephen? That I just can't see the benefit to her. Keir Starmer could say, we're a broad church, we accept everybody, but he is in a sense isolating members of his party. If you saw the looks on their faces when she did cross the floor. So I just can't see the benefits, really.
Yeah. A good question. No. God loves a sinner who repenteth. I mean, there's no question about that. But, I'd like, perfectly honest, I'd like to see a little evidence of repentance here. As for what you can get out of it, we got Mike Tapp, who's the adopted candidate, ex-military chap who's standing down in Dover and Deal. He's not going to make way for her. If you look at previous people who've crossed the floor, people like Sean Woodward, of Alan Howth, I mean, they ended up either in the Lords or in the Cabinet. I don't think that can possibly apply in this particular case. I don't think anybody, dangled a carrot, because from what I hear, the Chief Whip, Alan Campbell, didn't even know about this till half an hour before Q's. So this is something that was kept pretty much with Sue Gray, Keir Starmer, and very much the inner circle. So
Sue Gray.
A fine woman, in my opinion. But I think what you can get out of it is possibly a place on a housing quango. Well, to be honest, I mean, you and I have both turned down many places on many quangos, and I'm quite sure that Neil has turned down more quangos than I've had hot meals. So I don't know what's in it for her. Bit of notoriety, bit of a 5-day wonder. But as you say, Neil rather pithily put it, it's not just a 9 days wonder, it's a wonder why the hell she did it.
Well, and now you mentioned Sue Gray. I mean, she had something to do with it. I mean, Sue Gray, that whole issue with when she... I mean, that was an incredible interview from Nick Ferrari on LBC where he asked whether Keir Starmer was talking to her before or after, and he didn't sort of answer it, which already that looks bad. And now the old Natalie Elphicke business. I mean, seriously, Neil, some of the things that the Labour Party are doing, do you think that they are risking their majority by their lead at the moment?
Well, I think in its current situation, the Labour Party can afford to be a bit more choosy about who they accept, can't they? And it's rather surprising that Keir Starmer doesn't seem to have caught up with his own poll lead in this respect. Is there any genuine conversion here politically on part of Natalie Elphicke? There's no sign of it. If she's only just caught up with the fact the Tories have failed to keep their promises after 13 years in government, she's a bit behind the times, isn't she? They've been serial promise breakers right from the start. And so I really can't see what possible benefit she can bring to the Labour Party whatsoever. And in fact, as we know from the way that Labour MPs have been playing up over this, that Keir Starmer's got some internal problems in the offing. Even if they win the general election, that's when the fun will really start, of course.
Do you think this might be a sort of smokescreen for the ridiculous policy that Keir Starmer came up with? What was it? The border, some sort of using terror laws to protect, to stop the boats, when we're doing something similar to that anyway, Stephen. I mean, we've got something which is almost like a border command type thing. I'm sure all the departments talk to each other anyway. It's just like a marketing exercise. Do you think that's sort of really what Keir Starmer's doing with this?
No.
Or am I being too clever?
Come on, you have this great ability to spin off in all other directions when we talk. We want to talk about the integrated border control and border command. I'm happy to talk about that. That's a damn good idea. We should actually have an integrated...
We've already got something pretty similar to this. It's just the same thing with different words. It'll take him years to set that up.
Yeah. Well, hang on a second. Don't forget, up until 2008, particularly, we didn't have this problem because we were able to accelerate the processing. We had a Home Office that was slightly less sclerotic and incompetent than it is at the present time. And one of the benefits of having an integrated command and a rapid process of actually dealing with these cases is that we get people over here paying tax instead of, swanning around in 4-star hotels or being given $3,000 in their back pocket to shoot off to Central Africa.
So hold on a minute. Are you suggesting that the migrants who come here by boats should start working so they pay tax and contribute to the economy? Is that what you're saying? What do you mean people pay tax?
100% of the people who come here are not illegal asylum seekers or illegal immigrants. There are a number of people who have a perfectly valid case for asylum in this country.
What, the ones that come on the small boats?
No, in some cases, if they've been Afghan interpreters or people like that who have a genuine link to this country and a real fear of persecution, people coming from Iraq, if Nazarene Zaghari-Ratcliffe, when she was imprisoned in Iraq, imagine if she had come to this country, would we say no to her? I don't think so. We're not going to send people back to Tehran where the Ayatollahs are going to be waiting with sharpened scimitars.
Some of them will be sent back to Rwanda. That's the idea, isn't it? If they come here and they fail asylum here, they go to Rwanda.
Can we really afford the amount of money to choke their mouths with gold? I mean, we could send them in a Bentley Uber down there. It'd be a damn sight cheaper than hiring one plane.
Well, if it's a deterrent effect, then the idea, which it seems to be working in some way, is that people will put off others from coming here. And look, Neil, it appears to have some effect. It does. Migrants who we have spoken to here on GB News have said they don't like Rwanda and they would rather go somewhere else than the UK.
Well, I've got a better idea than Rwanda. Why don't we send them to the Republic of Ireland? Because the Republic of Ireland thinks that we are abusers of human rights, and therefore any asylum seeker in Ireland is entitled to stay there. So that'd be much cheaper than sending people to Rwanda. We'll just give them a free ticket to the border in Northern Ireland and say, off you go. I don't think that Rwanda is a big deal, actually, but I do think it's better than nothing.
Yeah.
Labour's answer is better bureaucracy. Well, I wouldn't give much for its chances. All governments say they're going to cut red tape and run things better than their predecessors, but it never works, of course. It's not a bureaucratic problem. The problem is these people should just be turned back at the border, shouldn't they? And we should return them to France whence they come, and then leave it to the French to sort it out. Of course, the Irish have now discovered that the Schengen, although they're not part of it, rules have been a disaster for Europe. And France won't take asylum seekers back from Ireland because the Dublin Convention isn't working anyway. And Italy has refused to take back asylum seekers from France. So, the whole thing is an absolute mess. No government anywhere in Europe, really, possibly from Hungary, has the political will to do something to stop the boats or smash the gangs, in Matthew Lazar's famous phrase that he keeps crossing out every opportunity.
OK, well, I'm going to ask you, Natalie Elphicke, then, is she an asset or a liability? Neil, asset or liability?
Liability.
And Stephen Pound, asset or liability for the Labour Party?
At the moment, asset.
At the moment. She's a liability. Come on, admit it, Stephen. It's a disaster. Nah. Thank you very much for your thoughts. That's Stephen Pound and also Neil Hamilton. You're with me. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News, our live on TV, online and digital radio, where we continue with the Great British Debate this hour. And I'm asking Natalie Elphicke, a Labour asset or a liability? You'll hear the thoughts of my panel, Danny Kelly and Christine Hamilton. But first, let's get your latest news with Aaron Armstrong.
Hi there, very good afternoon to you. It is 5:31. I'm Aaron Armstrong. The UK says it would support Palestine gaining full membership in the United Nations when the time is right. It currently only holds limited observer status. The comments by the Deputy Foreign Secretary come as Israel sent tanks back into northern Gaza alongside a series of airstrikes in an attempt to prevent Hamas from regrouping. Civilians there and also in the south have been told to evacuate as Israel presses ahead with its plans for a ground attack on Rafah. Earlier, the terrorist group posted a video claiming British-Israeli hostage Nadaf Popplewell has died after being injured in an airstrike last month. The government says it's urgently seeking more information. A third man's been arrested on suspicion of murder following a house fire in Wolverhampton. Emergency services were called to a property in the Dunstall Hill area at 2 a.m. yesterday, where two women, both in their 20s, were pronounced dead at the scene. Police have been granted more access and time to question two other men. Aged 19 and 22, it's believed they were known to the victims. Tory defector Natalie Elphicke denies she lobbied the Justice Secretary over her then-husband's sex offences trial. Sir Robert Buckland claims the MP, who crossed the floor to Labour, requested the case be moved to a lower-profile court. Speaking to the Sunday Times, she says she was told the request was completely inappropriate. Her spokesperson refuted the accusation, describing it as nonsense in the Mail on Sunday. Weather warnings for thunderstorms are in place across the country, with Britain's warm weather set to end this afternoon. The Met Office has issued a new alert for rain in southwest England. Areas of Northern Ireland can also expect heavy downpours. A warning there is in place until 6 a.m. on Tuesday. More info on all of our stories by scanning the QR code on your screen, or you can go to our website, gbnews.com, for more details. Now it's back to Nana.
"34 minutes after 5 o'clock, it's fast approaching. There's still plenty of time to win our biggest cash prize so far. Now, that's a whopping £20,000. Imagine having that in your bank account for the summer. But you've got to be in it to win it, so here's how.
Don't miss your chance to win our biggest cash prize so far. A totally terrific £20,000 in tax-free cash to make your summer spectacular. You could use that cash to splash out on a holiday, make the garden glam, buy a new car, or just save it for a rainy day. Whatever you'd spend £20,000 on, make sure you don't miss the chance to make it yours. For another chance to win £20,000 in tax-free cash, text WIN to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB05 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 31st of May. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
All right, so stay tuned. Next, it's time for the Great British Debate this hour. I'm asking Natalie Elphicke, Labour asset or liability? This is GB News.
Dubes & Co. Weekdays from 6 p.m.
Organisations, plural, because there's loads of people doing this. The organisations are charging schools to be part of this odd league table about who's trying to outdo who when it comes to who is more trans-inclusive with the kids than the next person. There's something makes me uneasy about this.
Supposing a child comes home and says, you think, oh, I've done well today. He said, well, how have you done? He said, well, I was #1 painter, or I was #1 reader. No, I wasn't. I was made LGBT champion. This is a 4- and 5-year-old. Look, I can understand this, actually, as we develop into the secondary school. I can understand more debates taking place. I cannot understand why we have to thrust it at young children. And I think if you ask the parents, they'd be hostile to it. And what about the role the teacher has to play in all this?
Society has been one way, the pendulum is swinging the other way, and they're pushing it very far in order to kind of proliferate change. And this is probably the toughest period in that evolutionary process, because the LGBTQ plus community is saying that you've got to really rage against the machine to get people to listen. Because put it like this now, even this conversation, the whole country is listening, the whole world is listening. These are the kinds of eyeballs and ears they haven't had before. And there's going to be friction. There's going to be a locking of heads in the process to getting to a point where you establish a new equilibrium where they feel more incorporated. Like I've said, the greatest force of allies that the LGBTQ plus community has always had is heterosexual women. What you're moving towards now is doing things that is beginning to turn them from allies into people who feel that, oh, for you to thrive, I'm being deprived, and that's a problem. When they realise you're alienating allies, they will understand you've got to recalibrate to have that kind of understanding between both parties.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking,
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
down to earth,
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
and most importantly, honest,
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon. It's 38 minutes after 5 o'clock. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. Now it's time for the Great British Debate this hour. I'm asking Natalie Elphicke, a Labour asset or liability? She's newly defected. She's facing scrutiny after it emerged that she may have lobbied the Justice Secretary over her ex-husband's sex offences. Sir Robert Buckland claims that the MP who crossed the floor to Labour requested the case be moved to a lower court. Now, her spokesperson refuted the accusation, describing it as nonsense in the Daily Mail. So for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking Natalie Elphicke, a Labour asset or a liability? Well, joining me to discuss my panel, broadcaster and author Christine Hamilton, also broadcaster and journalist Danny Kelly. Danny Kelly, I'll start with you. Natalie Elphicke.
I think she is an asset
to whom?
To the Labour Party.
Why?
Because Keir Starmer, look, I don't particularly like Starmer, but I think he's played a blinder. And I think what he's done, he doesn't care about the relationship between the left of the Labour Party. He knows where the fight is. It's the centre ground. And if there are any wavering voters, any Tories... I remember Boris Johnson in 2019 when he pleaded with those people whose fingers were quivering over the ballot box as to whether to vote for him or not. He's doing the same thing. He's convincing people on the Conservative side... Your beautiful smile making me laugh, Nana. She has, though. She's making me laugh. And she's convincing people who are quavering and worried about voting for Labour. Guess what? It's all right. We got a right-winger in the Labour Party.
Oh,
and Keir Starmer doesn't care about what the left
Don't you think that it looks like somebody who just would take anyone and do anything? I mean, there's
but the question is it an asset? Is she an asset? And I think she is an asset based on...
If she comes across, or he comes across as somebody who will accept pretty much anyone in their party, then I think that it might be a
but he's
liability.
blanked Nigel Farage, hasn't he? Apparently he said he's not.
Well,
even though that was just hype.
She's probably further right than Nigel, isn't she?
Yeah, but she's pretty right-wing. And she's described him in the past as no plans Starmer and Sir Softy. So she's got no time for Starmer. So, I mean, obviously there's an initial, yes, this is wonderful, a Tory MP is crossing the floor, but you have to wonder what's behind it. Starmer obviously couldn't resist the deliciousness of immediately embarrassing the Tories.
That's right.
And especially the way they did it. I wonder whose idea that was, to ambush Rishi Sunak just as Prime Minister's Questions was getting underway.
What a betrayal, actually, the way it was done.
What a betrayal. And this is a woman, of course she defended her husband and apparently has very strong Catholic instincts, which was something to do with that's what her mother said. But she also, let's be honest, as a Member of Parliament, she wasn't a Member of Parliament then, yes she was a Member of Parliament in the place of her husband, and she thought it was right to interfere with the political process. It isn't just what you've just described as that she has denied. Personally, I would rather believe Robert Jenrick than her, and he says it did happen, she says it didn't. But she tried to interfere in several ways. I mean, she was suspended from Parliament for a day, along with 3 or 4 others for trying to interfere. So this is a woman who hasn't really got, you know, her morals are a little bit questionable. And yes, it's wonderful for Starmer right now. But as Neil Kinnock said, I love this quote, he said, Labour is a very broad church, but churches have walls and there is a limit. So I wonder why they've said they haven't offered her a peerage, but she will get something. She's not going to stand again. She'll get a Quango job. She will get something, I bet. But it'll all, you know, nobody will care by then. It's had the initial impact, which is good for Labour.
Do you think...
In the long term, I think it's ludicrous.
So this is the same moment that Keir Starmer tells us about his border command. Do you think that it's such a dodgy plan that it's kind of being overshadowed, the detail of it, because we've already got something similar to that anyway?
Let
me just finish. No. Do you think that perhaps he was slightly using Natalie Elphicke as almost like a smoke screen so that people wouldn't scrutinise his border command so heavily?
OK, you know the dinghies, right? You know,
Are you going to answer my question or just say what you were going to say anyway?
Well, it's all part of the Keir Starmer question.
Right, go on then.
Right, he's basing everything on crushing the criminal gangs, isn't he? OK, they're like the mafia. As soon as you remove the mafia, what do you think's stopping people just buying a dinghy? The people that are actually stopping people just buying a dinghy and getting on it yourself for 500 quid, however much the dinghy costs, is the mafia, OK? Those gangs. Once those gangs are removed, all of the people who are on dinghies, all they're going to do is just buy a dinghy and do it themselves. And that's all they're going to do. You're not going to stop the crossings. People are just forced into paying thousands of pounds because that's the only option. If those gangs are smashed, then all you're going to do is buy a dinghy, hop on a dinghy and get over to Dover. Of course.
Do you think? I don't think so. I think that people won't do it because there'll be risks, and I don't think they're prepared to take them.
What are the new risks by doing it yourself and not by doing it by playing a people smuggler?
Yeah, well, I suspect you might just get it wrong. At least they know the tides and things like that. There's so many different things.
Google will tell you.
Very quickly, I think...
Very quickly then, Christine.
She's incredibly naive. She doesn't think the Tories have done enough about immigration, and she's right. But the idea that Labour are going to do any better, I think, is moonshine.
Yeah, that's why I think perhaps he's using it as a smokescreen to cover this ridiculous plan of his. But this shows nothing without you and your views. Maybe you think differently. Let's welcome some of our great British voices on the show, their opportunity to be on and tell us what they really think about the topics we're discussing. Right, let's see. I've got 3 of you. I'm going to start with Alan Cook in London. Alan, Natalie Elphicke, is she an asset or a liability?
Hiya, Nana. Well, have you ever been on holiday?
No, I haven't actually for about 15 years.
Have you ever worn flip-flops?
I've worn flip-flops, even...
Once. Good.
Yeah.
But you bought a pair. You had 2. You had your third lefty flip-flop, and you've had your disgraced righty flip-flop.
Do you think these are 2 left flipping flops?
You used them both, didn't you?
Yeah,
so
I didn't got 2 left ones. Yeah. Like Dan Abbott.
Exactly. So this just highlights the problem we have in English politics at the moment, is the fact that it's always left against right, and it's not about policy. And we need to basically look at common sense policy and not look at policy derived from a certain place on the spectrum. Obviously, she and Starmer both have now questions to answer about principles, because, you know, it's an unholy alliance. They think different things. They're coming from different places, but they seem to have found a common ground. I can't see that common ground.
I think the common ground is a pair of flip-flops, a left and a right foot rather than 2 left.
Short-term,
the ones
she's
that
an
Dan Abbott
asset.
was wearing. Listen, I've got to move on because I've got it. So, asset or liability?
Okay.
Asset or liability?
Short-term, she's an asset. Long-term, because there's no...
No, you're going on again. Julie in Bedford. Thank you. He squeezes every last bit out of it, doesn't he?
I think, you know, I'm agreeing with what the panel is saying here. I think she's an asset, but for the wrong reasons. I think she's going to gain more votes for Keir, and I think it's more of a strategic plan. But are we going to end up with a Labour Party that's actually going to end up full of Tories? Because they're all defecting over there. We're not actually going to end up with any Labour supporting Labours. are we? So I think at the moment she's an asset, but for all the wrong reasons. But I certainly think her mouth will probably run away with her again soon, and she'll get herself into more trouble.
Thank you, Julie. Lee Webb in Bedfordshire.
I actually think she's a bit of a liability because we're already getting drip feed of some of the naughty things she may or may not have done. I don't know that. But she's got, we've got about 12 weeks left of this Parliament, and she's not even standing again. So I think she would be more hassle for the Labour Party than less of an asset, more of a liability for the Labour Party. I just can't think what Keir Starmer was thinking of. And if Natalie Elphicke was going to cause trouble, she could do that pretty much on her own anyhow. I think this is all about raising her profile, maybe another book.
Or maybe I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here, or some of those things. Or maybe she's got her eye on Strictly. Honestly. Listen, thank you so much, Alan Cook, Julie, and also Lee Webb. Thank you so much, Julie Ford in Bedfordshire. Thank you so much. Right, coming up, clickbait. We'll be talking about this very brave woman. What's she doing? Next, Supplement Sunday, where my panel and I discuss some of the stories that caught their eye. Stay tuned.
Hello, welcome to your GB News weather update brought to you by the Met Office. For the outlook, drier in the east but turning unsettled in the west and also feeling cooler as we go into Monday. So high pressure is going to be moving its way eastwards. We do have some weather fronts that's bringing a focus for some showers or longer spells of rain through the rest of today. And we do have some warnings in force as well for thunderstorm. Thunderstorms are going to be pushing their way northwards, affecting northern England and also into Scotland. Some of these are going to be quite heavy at times, giving hail and thunder. Elsewhere, turning drier, some low cloud across western parts, clearest in the east, but temperatures still ranging around 10 or 11 degrees. So it is going to be a mild start as we start Monday, but a bit of an east-west split in the weather. Once that low cloud generally clears across much of England and Wales, it will turn drier and brighter. Showers coming into Scotland, but further west we have an area of low pressure bringing outbreaks of rain across Northern Ireland, western parts of England and also into South Wales too. So it is going to be feeling cooler for all, highs of up to maybe 20 or 22 degrees. As we go through Tuesday, that rain shifts its focus further towards the north and east with showers following, and then that really sets the scene for the outlook as well. So longer spells of rain on Tuesday, Wednesday and Thursday, sunny spells, scattered showers, not as warm but still highs of 20 or 21 degrees.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Sunday nights on GB News. From 6, Neil Oliver. At 7, it's Free Speech Nation with Andrew Doyle. At 9, Mark Dolan. And at 11, get set for the week ahead with headliners. Tomorrow's papers tonight. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And why it matters to you. From your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you. Good afternoon, Britain. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Well, it's time for Supplement Sunday in a moment, but now it's time for Clipbait. Let's have a look. This is a viral video of a woman who seems to be doing something. Let's play it and I'll tell you what's happening. She's running. She's actually caught this guy. She's rugby tackled him to the ground. She's actually tackling a suspect that the police are chasing.
Wow.
Here she goes again. Here she goes, run, 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 catch, poor.
Wow.
The police couldn't get her and then she's wrestled him to the floor. Amazing.
Big old lump, isn't she?
She's not that big.
Danny!
She did stop a runaway car.
Talk.
Danny,
No, I'm just saying.
She looks your size.
I'm just saying that if ever there was a woman who was going to stop a runaway criminal with a rugby tackle, it was a woman.
She wasn't that big, and she moves.
That's all I'm saying.
Look at her.
Yeah, she's very shapely.
Good for her.
Yes, so she wrestled this guy to the floor. The police come and arrest the suspect. Incredible.
Good for her.
Well done. Good on her.
Not that people should necessarily be encouraged.
And that's in America as well, so they all have guns.
Like
yeah, that's right. Scary. Even braver.
So she did it very brave, right? But now it's time for Supplement Sunday, where our panel and I discuss some of the news stories that caught their eyes. Joining me, Danny, Kelly, and Christine Hamilton. Right, Christine, we'll start with yours.
Well, I cheated. It came from yesterday's paper. There we are. Junk food could take years off your life. Eating too many ultra-processed foods can lead to early death. I mean, it's not exactly rocket science, is it? But Harvard University, this is their research, and they tracked all sorts of people, and they reckon that 4% more deaths occurred amongst those who ate around 7 servings of junk a day.
That's a lot.
That's quite a lot to eat. But do you know, I reckon quite a lot of people do eat 5 to 7 portions of junk.
That's a lot of food. What would that be?
Too many people.
I've had 3 cakes already this morning. Would you want? It was in 1 serving though. So is that 3 lots of junk food or just the one?
I'll get on to Harvard and ask.
No, that's 3 lots.
There's one at one time. One serving.
One sitting is 3 lots.
No,
an awful lot.
If I had 7 burgers, which I could do in one sitting, is that 1 or is it 7?
It's 1 serving, but you could have 7 servings.
There you go, 7 servings.
I will try and find out. But seriously, serious point. Too many people eat too much junk food.
Well, I might get a Megan one off you if you've got time, because we all know that, Danny.
David Cameron, quite legitimately reigniting the argument about whether the BBC should call Hamas terrorists or not after that terrible video was released. And he was on Laura Kuenssberg's show, so he wasn't in friendly territory here. He's at a BBC studio, and he actually made a point of reigniting it, saying maybe the BBC should think twice now about calling a prescribed group terrorists who go around raping women, shooting kids and all of that ghastly stuff on October the 7th. Yet the BBC are intransigent. They refuse to call them terrorists.
That's interesting, isn't it? Well, that's my supplement, and listen, turn the volume down if you've got children in the room listening, but a Catholic priest has been reprimanded after he claimed that Jesus died on the cross with an erection. Now, that's what he said. Don't laugh, seriously. I hope I'm allowed to say that. Apologies if I've offended anybody, but that is what this Catholic priest claimed. Father Thomas McHale from the US told roughly 100 churchgoers on Good Friday that the blood would have rushed to Christ's bottom at half, and as he was knelt to I can't do that.
Why would he even...
Sorry about that. I think we've crossed the line there. Apologies for that if anyone was offended.
I really don't want to think about that.
That's terrible.
That was a hard one to talk about.
Danny Kelly! As I said, apologies for anyone who's offended. I did warn you beforehand anyway, so I think I've covered all bases.
I think that was awful.
Yeah, terrible.
Well,
that's what they said.
Or the story.
Well, quickly, let's find a good one. Let's do Meghan Markle.
No, you shouldn't have made a joke. Oh, well, I haven't got it in front of me.
What was it? No, let's do go on with Meghan.
Well, what I was slightly horrified was I was reading a paper in the green room outside, and Meghan Markle, she's gone to one of the poorest countries in the world, in Nigeria, and she was wearing a dress that cost £2,000 and whatever. She had earrings on that cost even more, £2,600 worth of earrings. She had bangles all over her arms. One of her bangles was apparently diamond encrusted and worth £7,000. I mean, what is that woman on?
Exactly. We'd all like a bit of that, seriously. I think it's on royalty and money. Right, well, listen, on today's show, I've been asking, is it time to ban extreme protests? Well, according to our Twitter poll, a whopping 91.1% of you say yes, and just 8.9% of you say no. And in the it's not good news for Natalie Elphicke either, because as an incredible 95.2% of you think that she's a liability for the Labour Party. Thank you so much to my panel, journalist and broadcaster Danny Kelly, and author and broadcaster Christine Hamilton. And also thank you to you for your company. Next up is Neil Oliver. I'll leave you with the weather. Enjoy.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, welcome to your GB News weather update brought to you by the Met Office. For the outlook, drier in the east but turning unsettled in the west and also feeling cooler as we go into Monday. So high pressure is going to be moving its way eastwards. We do have some weather fronts that's bringing a focus for some showers or longer spells of rain through the rest of today. And we do have some warnings in force as well for thunderstorms. Thunderstorms are going to be pushing their way northwards, affecting northern England and also into Scotland. Some of these are going to be quite heavy at times, giving hail and thunder. Elsewhere, turning drier, some low cloud across western parts, clearest in the east, but temperatures still ranging around 10 or 11 degrees. So it is going to be a mild start as we start Monday, but a bit of an east-west split in the weather. Once that low cloud generally clears across much of England and Wales, it will turn drier and brighter. Showers coming into Scotland, but further west we have an area of low pressure bringing outbreaks of rain across Northern Ireland, western parts of England and also into South Wales too. So it is going to be feeling cooler for all, highs of up to maybe 20 or 22 degrees. As we go through Tuesday, that rain shifts its focus further towards the north and east with showers following, and then that really sets the scene for the outlook as well. So longer spells of rain on Tuesday, Wednesday and Thursday, sunny spells, scattered showers, not as warm but still highs of 20 or 21 degrees.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
You really could be our next big winner with an incredible £20,000 in tax-free cash to play with this summer. What would you spend that on? Well, whilst you're thinking about it, listen to some of our previous winners getting that winning phone call from us.
I'm Charles. I'm on 8